across Utah's vast and rugged landscapes, traces of an ancient world quietly resist explanation. From towering sandstone cliffs etched with enigmatic figures to hidden granaries clinging precariously to canyon walls, each discovery shows knowledge and skill that modern science struggles to comprehend. Artifacts, petroglyphs, and architectural remnants hint at societies capable of feats that defy assumptions of time, technology, and culture, leaving only questions in their wake. Shadows of the past linger in every crevice, as if these places themselves are holding secrets just out of reach. Through narrow canyons, beneath overhanging cliffs, and across windswept mesas, the expeditions lead you into spaces where light and shadow collide, revealing carved panels, clay figurines, and ancient pathways. You will encounter the handiwork of civilizations long gone, feel the eerie stillness of abandoned dwellings, and witness creations that challenge conventional understanding, each site holding both clarity and enduring mystery. The Great Gallery figures of Horseshoe Canyon. In the far reaches of southeastern Utah, where Horseshoe Canyon cuts a winding corridor through the sandstone of what is now Canyonlands National Park, one of the most perplexing ancient discoveries in the American Southwest remains fixed to a cliff wall. Known as the Great Gallery, this immense panel of Barrier Canyon-style rock art stretches across a sheltered alcove deep within the canyon. Its figures rise in faded reds and browns against pale stone, preserved by dryness and isolation. For decades, archaeologists have studied it, yet the meaning and intent behind these towering forms remain unsettled. Visitors who manage the long trek are often struck by the uncanny scale and detail which seem to surpass the capabilities of a purely nomadic society. The gallery extends for nearly 200 feet along the canyon wall, forming a continuous composition rather than a single isolated image. Several of the central anthropomorphic figures stand more than 7 feet tall, dwarfing the smaller shapes arranged around them. Their bodies are elongated and tapering, often lacking clearly defined limbs, and many are filled with faint interior lines or subtle shading. The pigments were derived from natural minerals such as hematite for red tones and charcoal for darker hues, carefully mixed and applied to the stone surface with deliberate control. Even after centuries of exposure, the figures retain a presence that seems almost purposeful, as if the canyon itself was chosen to amplify their significance. Scholars generally attribute the Great Gallery to the Archaic period, with estimates often ranging between roughly 2000 BCE and 500 CE, though direct dating remains difficult. Unlike later Fremont or ancestral Puebloan imagery, which frequently depicts hunting scenes or daily activities, the Barrier Canyon style emphasizes abstract, imposing human-like forms. The absence of clear contextual scenes complicates interpretation, leaving researchers to rely on stylistic comparison and associated archaeological evidence. Organic materials from nearby sites have provided approximate chronological anchors, but no single date definitively explains when each figure was painted. Even the techniques used suggest experimentation and repetition, hinting at a cultural tradition that evolved over generations. The central figures dominate the composition with commanding vertical presence, their hollow or darkened eye shapes drawing immediate attention. Some appear faceless, while others possess large oval eyes that contrast sharply with the lighter pigment surrounding them. Smaller human forms cluster near these larger beings, sometimes overlapping or positioned as if in relation to a hierarchy. Whether these arrangements represent mythic entities, ancestral spirits, or symbolic leaders is still debated. The scale alone suggests that the artists intended to create more than decoration. They constructed a visual statement meant to endure. Subtle variations between the figures hint that different hands may have contributed to the gallery over decades, or even centuries. Creating figures of such magnitude would have required careful preparation and physical coordination. The artist likely used temporary scaffolding or natural ledges to reach higher sections of the wall, though no structural remnants remain. The selection of a broad, smooth alcove indicates awareness of how the surface would preserve pigment over centuries. The placement also benefits from natural protection against direct rainfall and harsh sun exposure, factors that have contributed to the survival of the images. Even so, wind erosion and temperature fluctuations have gradually softened their once sharper outlines, leaving only traces of meticulous artistry that once may have been far more vivid and commanding. interpretations of the Great Gallery frequently turn to ritual and altered states of consciousness as possible explanations. Some researchers compare the elongated torsos and internal patterns to entoptic imagery described in neurological studies of trance experiences. According to this view, the figures may reflect visionary encounters translated into paint by spiritual practitioners. Yet such hypotheses remain speculative, as there is no written record from the culture that created them. Without direct testimony, scholars must balance imaginative frameworks with cautious restraint. The lack of written language or oral continuity makes each interpretation provisional, a delicate dance between imagination and evidence. The surrounding canyon provides little evidence of permanent habitation directly beneath the panel. Unlike sites littered with hearth remains, stone tools, or domestic debris, the immediate area of the Great Gallery appears relatively sparse. This absence has led some archaeologists to suggest that the alcove functioned as a ceremonial space, rather than a living area. If gatherings occurred here, they may have been seasonal or episodic, leaving minimal archaeological traces. The silence of material evidence deepens the ambiguity surrounding the figure's intended audience. It also raises the question of whether the site's creators returned repeatedly over time, or if it was a singular, extraordinary effort by one generation. Barrier Canyon-style rock art appears elsewhere in Utah, including Sego Canyon and parts of the San Rafael Swell, yet the Great Gallery remains the most extensive and visually cohesive example. The stylistic similarities across distant locations imply communication or shared belief systems among dispersed archaic groups. These communities likely moved across vast desert landscapes, following seasonal resources, carrying symbolic traditions with them. How such imagery maintained consistency across space and time without centralized settlements continues to puzzle researchers. The desert may have connected rather than isolated these early peoples, fostering a broader cultural continuity that modern science struggles to fully comprehend. Light and shadow alter the gallery's appearance throughout the day, subtly transforming the figure's expressions. As sunlight shifts across the alcove, the hollow eye shapes deepen in contrast, giving the illusion of movement or watchfulness. The curvature of the sandstone amplifies this effect, creating changing perspectives for anyone standing before the wall. While these visual shifts can be explained by natural lighting, they may have been intentionally anticipated by the original artists. If so, the creators possessed a sophisticated awareness of environment and visual perception, blending art and nature in a way that continues to challenge understanding. Modern preservation efforts recognize both the fragility and importance of the site. Access now requires a long hike into Horseshoe Canyon, limiting casual visitation and reducing potential damage. The National Park Service monitors environmental impacts and discourages physical contact with the rock surface to protect the ancient pigment. Technological tools such as digital enhancement and high-resolution photography allow researchers to study faint details without direct interference. Despite these advances, technology has not unlocked a definitive explanation for the gallery's meaning. Each image remains a cipher, preserving knowledge and mystery in equal measure. As archaeological theory evolves, interpretations of the Great Gallery continue to shift. Earlier generations sometimes framed the figures as primitive expressions of survival culture, but contemporary scholarship acknowledges the complexity of archaic societies. Evidence from other regional sites indicates trade networks, symbolic behaviour, and long-distance movement that challenge simplistic narratives. The Great Gallery stands within this broader context of emerging recognition that ancient desert communities possessed rich intellectual and spiritual lives. Yet, acknowledgement of complexity does not equal comprehension of this particular work. The canyon seems to guard its secrets as fiercely as it shelters its fragile art. Thousands of years have passed since pigment first met sandstone in this secluded canyon, and every scientific method applied to the panel has clarified materials and context without dissolving its core enigma. The Great Gallery remains an ancient discovery in Utah that science cannot fully explain, not because it defies chemistry or geology, but because its creators left no key to its intention. The towering forms endure in silence, neither confirming nor denying the many theories projected onto them, preserving a mystery as vast and quiet as the desert that surrounds them. And in the stillness of Horseshoe Canyon, those towering figures continue to watch without revealing who they were meant to represent. The Parowan Gap Solar Calendar Carvings. Morning light slips through the narrow defile of Parowan Gap, touching grooves in the stone that seem to hum with the weight of centuries. The desert air is crisp and still, carrying the faint scent of sun-baked sandstone, and the surrounding cliffs rise sharply, enclosing the pass like a natural amphitheatre. Here, in Iron County, Utah, one of the state's most mysterious ancient discoveries endures. A series of solar-aligned carvings etched into rock by hands whose knowledge of celestial cycles continues to baffle modern science. Even from a distance, the grooves suggest deliberate calculation, hinting at astronomical observation far beyond ordinary survival needs. Jagged cliffs rise on either side of the pass, their smooth sandstone faces intersected by deep fissures that have guided wind and sun for millennia. The formation narrows in places, creating vantage points where sunlight penetrates at precise angles during certain seasons. From the canyon floor, shadows stretch across the desert in patterns that change daily, yet the grooves carved along the walls seem to interact with this shifting light in startlingly precise ways. The isolation of the site adds to its mystery, as if the land itself were chosen deliberately to host a ritual or observation impossible to conduct elsewhere. Shallow lines and circular indentations scar the sandstone, arranged in patterns that suggest not randomness, but a deliberate tracing of the heavens. Concentric circles, angular grooves, and small depressions interweave across the surface, forming an intricate map that hints at knowledge of solar cycles. Some shapes are deep enough to catch shadow, while others are faint, requiring careful attention to perceive. Each mark appears intentional, yet its function remains unclear. Archaeologists note that while these carvings bear resemblance to other Fremont-era symbols, their precision and scale distinguish Parowan Gap as something far more calculated than typical petroglyphic expression. As the sun climbs the horizon during the summer solstice, its rays slide precisely along the carved grooves, illuminating certain symbols while leaving others in shadow. Observers report that at specific moments, the alignment appears exact, highlighting one particular notch or circle for only a brief interval before the light shifts. Such precision indicates repeated observation and careful placement over long periods, suggesting a knowledge of solar behavior that is startling, given the technological tools likely available at the time. Each alignment transforms the alcove into a stage for celestial choreography, as if the carvings themselves anticipate the sun's journey. Each groove seems measured with a sophistication that defies expectations for archaic period communities, implying a careful observation of solar movement across years. The markings show an understanding of angles, spacing, and the sun's annual path, demonstrating an intellectual capacity for astronomy that remains remarkable. Some grooves track sunrise, others sunset, while combinations of lines may correspond to equinoxes, yet no documentation explains why these choices were made. How ancient hands calculated these positions without modern instruments is still debated, and even the most detailed surveys leave open questions about methodology, intention, and the practical or spiritual purposes behind the carvings. Fremont groups once travelled these high desert corridors, leaving behind enigmatic traces, yet no written record explains why these alignments were so meticulously etched. Artifacts found nearby include pottery fragments, stone tools, and occasional arrowheads, providing context for regional occupation, but none clarify the carving's meaning. Scholars surmise that the site may have functioned as a ceremonial calendar, yet the lack of domestic debris beneath the panels suggests the alcove was used for observation or ritual, rather than habitation. The juxtaposition of ordinary tools with extraordinary celestial planning deepens the puzzle, highlighting the ingenuity of a culture that left no explanatory record. For a brief moment each year, the shifting sunlight transforms ordinary stone into a dynamic display, casting ephemeral shapes that dance across the canyon floor. Visitors report a sensation of time stretching, as the interplay of light and carved grooves creates illusions of movement and depth. The sun's alignment highlights geometric patterns in ways that appear almost intentional, suggesting that ancient observers understood the interplay between material and light. This fleeting spectacle reinforces the notion that Parowan Gap is more than decoration. It is an instrument designed to communicate, measure, or mark celestial events with precision that modern study has struggled to fully interpret. Modern surveys and 3D imaging confirm that the angles of the grooves correspond to solstices and equinoxes, yet no experiment has uncovered the full reasoning behind their placement. Researchers have mapped each indentation, measured sightlines, and even recreated shadows with laser projections, yet the carvings resist full explanation. The precision implies not only technical skill but also long-term observational practice, demanding patience, organisation, and a conceptual framework sophisticated enough to record the sun's movement year after year. Despite extensive documentation, the carvings remain enigmatic, preserving the knowledge and ritual of a people whose intention is lost to time. Some scholars propose the carvings may have functioned as ceremonial markers or agricultural calendars, though every theory remains circumstantial, lacking direct evidence. Others suggest they could have been tied to seasonal migrations or spiritual observances, reflecting cosmologies encoded in stone. Every interpretation is tempered by the absence of corroborating material culture that could confirm practical or religious use. The resulting uncertainty leaves the site suspended between fact and speculation, demanding respect for both the physical precision of the carvings and the mystery of their purpose. The more that is studied, the more the site deepens its silent challenge. Across the region, similar solar alignments appear in distant sites, but none combine the precision and desert solitude found at Parowan Gap, leaving it uniquely puzzling. While Sego Canyon, Moonhouse, and other Puebloan sites exhibit astronomical knowledge, Parowan Gap is isolated, smaller in scale, and yet remarkably accurate. Its quiet desert setting allows light to strike the grooves without obstruction, making observation and measurement both possible and mysterious. The contrast between its simplicity and its exactitude enhances the impression that ancient observers wielded knowledge lost to modern understanding, leaving the carvings as an enduring enigma of human ingenuity. Even as researchers map the grooves and calculate solar positions, the ancient observers' intentions remain hidden, each shadow raising more questions than answers. The site resists full explanation because it is both functional and symbolic, utilitarian yet ritualistic, concrete yet ephemeral. Modern observers can record the alignments, replicate angles, and measure durations, but they cannot capture the mental framework of the people who first carved the stone. Each solstice brings repetition of the same celestial event, yet the meaning behind the carvings remains suspended, as if the desert itself guards the knowledge from those who seek it. The pass holds a stillness that is both ordinary and profound, where stone and sunlight meet in silent testimony to a vanished understanding. No wind, sound, or movement diminishes the effect of light upon carved grooves, and no modern interpretation can fully convey the sensation of standing at Parowan Gap at the precise moment of alignment. The careful observer sees not only the geometry, but also the centuries of human intention embedded in stone, creating a fragile bridge between past and present. Despite modern tools and analysis, the carvings endure as a riddle, and their true purpose has yet to be revealed fully. Every year, when the solstice sun strikes the grooves, it leaves a question etched across the desert that no one has yet unravelled. The Newspaper Rock Petroglyph Archive. Across a sun-baked sandstone wall, hundreds of etched images press together like whispers of countless voices long silenced. The surface, stretching nearly 200 feet along the cliff, near Monticello, Utah, is densely crowded with marks left by generations of humans over millennia. Scholars call it newspaper rock, yet the analogy to print captures only a fraction of its enigmatic power. The carvings, animals, abstract shapes, handprints, and human forms layer across time in ways that defy chronological order. For anyone standing before it, the wall conveys the sensation of witnessing a living archive, a record of intent, observation, and story, its meaning frustratingly just out of reach. The cliff rises along a remote stretch of Utah highway, its surface carved with markings that have endured wind, rain, and centuries of desert sun. The surrounding desert opens wide, the red and tan sandstone cliffs punctuated by occasional juniper and sagebrush, creating an arena where shadows shift constantly. Small fissures and natural indentations provided ideal surfaces for human hands to leave their marks, yet the placement of the carvings is deliberate, concentrated on the smoothest expanses. Even with modern access, the site maintains a sense of isolation, as though the landscape itself preserved the archive for careful observation and protection, guarding secrets that remain invisible to casual glance. Figures of bison, deer, and human forms crowd alongside abstract spirals, geometric shapes, and enigmatic symbols, forming a dense archive of intention. Some animals appear mid-stride, others at rest, while humans are depicted in hunting or gesturing poses. Spiral forms suggest cycles or celestial reference, though their exact meaning is unknown. Repetition of motifs across sections indicates that certain symbols were significant enough to recur over time. The density of the carvings produces a visual effect akin to layered writing, an intricate palimpsest etched into sandstone, blending generations into one continuous cryptic record that both invites attention and defies interpretation. Generations of archaic, Fremont, Ute, and Navajo peoples each left traces upon the stone, layering meaning in ways impossible to fully separate. Radiocarbon dating of nearby artifacts, combined with stylistic analysis, allows scholars to estimate the time frame, yet the exact sequence of marks is elusive. Each group brought its own cultural perspective, yet all converged on this cliff face, adding to an ongoing dialogue across centuries. Some figures overlap, partially obscuring previous carvings, creating a deliberate tension between past and present. The wall thus becomes a temporal tapestry, where human presence persists not in habitation, but in persistent enigmatic communication. Certain symbols recur with striking regularity, handprints, circles, and intersecting lines hinting at ritual, storytelling, or events long forgotten. The repetition may signal important social, spiritual, or seasonal observations, though the meaning of each symbol remains speculative. Some marks are clearly ceremonial, while others appear utilitarian, perhaps denoting territory or recording hunts. Yet the sheer variety and scale of the carvings suggest more than practicality. Scholars note that the interplay of recurring shapes creates subtle patterns across the panel, as if the creators were composing messages intended to be read in layers over time, a silent record of culture encoded in stone. Deep incisions in the sandstone reveal careful workmanship, carved with stone tools into surfaces designed to endure the passage of time. Some grooves are narrow and precise, others broader and more weathered, yet all have survived centuries of erosion. The hardness of the sandstone, combined with the depth of carving, ensures the endurance of these images. The choice of site and technique implies an understanding of the material's durability. Observers can trace the marks of each incision, imagining the deliberate motions that shaped them, the time and patience required to etch a message meant to last long after the original carver had vanished. Overlapping figures create puzzles within puzzles, as though the rock itself preserves a conversation between creators separated by centuries. Animals intersect with geometric forms, human shapes overlay spirals, and handprints press against older carvings in a complex visual dialogue. This layered arrangement complicates interpretation, challenging modern scholars to distinguish chronology, intent, and cultural meaning. Yet the overlaps themselves may carry meaning, suggesting a form of communication where new messages respond to or comment upon older ones. In this way, the wall becomes more than a record. It is an ongoing narrative, a silent archive that refuses to yield its secrets easily. Anthropologists and archaeologists have meticulously recorded the carvings, yet even the most thorough surveys describe them without truly explaining their meaning. High-resolution photography, tracings, and digital mapping allow detailed study, revealing subtle details invisible to the naked eye. Researchers note differences in technique, depth, and style that indicate contributions from multiple cultures over centuries. Despite this documentation, the function and intent of many symbols remain enigmatic. The carvings resist reduction to a simple narrative or explanation, preserving mystery in every groove. Each study confirms the extraordinary craftsmanship and layered history, yet leaves the purpose, the why, unresolved and tantalizingly beyond modern understanding. Attempts to decode the images reveal tantalizing patterns, but the archive resists singular interpretation, preserving its secrets beneath layers of history. Some motifs echo known Fremont and Utah iconography, while others appear abstract or unique. The density of the carvings complicates analysis, creating both visual and conceptual interference. Efforts to align the images with celestial events, hunting practices, or ritual calendars yield inconclusive results. This ambiguity adds to the site's intrigue, forcing recognition that some knowledge may have been intended for initiated participants or was perhaps deliberately cryptic. The more modern science searches, the more the wall's silence endures. Visitors and indigenous observers alike report a sense of continuity, as though each mark contributes to a dialogue spanning generations long past. Contemporary communities recognize Newspaper Rock as a sacred or culturally significant site, honouring the persistence of ancestral expression. Even casual observers sense the weight of human presence encoded into stone, a tangible record of those who shaped the desert landscape with deliberate attention and purpose. The canyon and its wall act as a bridge across time, linking observer and creator, past and present, through marks that survive millennia with their meaning stubbornly obscured. Afternoon sun casts angled light across the petroglyphs, accentuating depth and animating the stone with fleeting shadows that hint at hidden motion. Light shifts gradually throughout the day, revealing previously unnoticed carvings, emphasizing textures and grooves. The effect creates a sense of movement, as if the wall itself breathes or responds to the observer. This transient illumination reinforces the notion of Newspaper Rock as both archive and performance, a canvas for human expression interacting with natural forces. Standing before it, one is aware that the carvings were made to last, yet to be experienced anew with each passing moment and changing light. Standing before this crowded archive, one senses both the human desire to communicate and the stubborn silence of those who left their marks, enduring far beyond their creators. The wall's sheer density of marks, the layering of centuries, and the mysterious repetition of symbols evoke awe. Every figure tells a fragment of a story, yet the complete narrative remains inaccessible. The physical presence of the rock, the desert's solitude, and the layered human legacy combine to create an atmosphere where the mind reaches for understanding and finds only questions. Newspaper Rock becomes a testament not only to skill and observation, but to the enduring power of unanswered communication. Despite every effort to decipher its stories, Newspaper Rock continues to guard its secrets, whispering questions that have remained unanswered for centuries. The Sego Canyon cultural overlap. Symbols and figures press into the reddish sandstone cliffs, some etched deep, others barely visible, as if multiple hands over centuries conspired to speak in a single voice, yet the meaning slips away. This extraordinary concentration of overlapping carvings is found within Sego Canyon, where the walls preserve an archive of cultural expression that continues to baffle researchers. Observers can see human figures, animals, and abstract symbols crowded together, forming layers of interaction that seem almost intentional, yet their purpose remains hidden. Each groove and painted mark suggests a message meant to endure beyond the life of its creator. Small fissures and natural ledges interrupt the carvings, sometimes incorporated into the designs themselves, hinting at an intimate understanding of the canyon's surface by those who made them. Sego Canyon's walls rise abruptly on either side, with narrow washes weaving between them, shaping the play of sunlight and shadow across every carved surface. At certain times of day, light grazes the cliffs at a low angle, illuminating incised lines while casting older, faded markings into relative darkness. The surrounding desert amplifies the sense of isolation, as the silence of sagebrush and distant mesas frames a space where the only witness to centuries of human activity is the wind. Even brief observation reveals how the canyon itself interacts with its inhabitants' marks, altering perception across hours, days, and seasons. The sandstone's varying coloration, from deep crimson to pale beige, emphasizes subtle differences in depth and technique, revealing details that might otherwise go unnoticed. Fremont anthropomorphic figures share space with swirling archaic symbols and detailed depictions of bighorn sheep crafted by the Ute, creating a visual collage unlike any other site in Utah. Some carvings are life-sized, while others are small and delicate, their scale emphasizing the diversity of intent. Spirals and geometric patterns appear alongside realistic hunting scenes, suggesting that multiple traditions were simultaneously at play. The layering is dense, with new marks occasionally overlapping older ones, producing a sense of dialogue that continues to intrigue archaeologists and visitors alike. The juxtaposition of styles within such proximity creates a tension between cultures that remains unresolved even today. In several alcoves, later carvings intersect with older figures, creating visual tension that hints at communication or symbolic response. A handprint may partially cover a spiraling motif, or a human figure may extend over an animal depiction from a previous era. These overlaps challenge conventional understanding of chronology and purpose, implying either long-standing ritual traditions or coincidental reuse of prominent wall space. The effect is striking. Centuries of human presence collide in one concentrated area, leaving modern observers to wonder whether the carvings were meant as conversation, commentary, or a silent claim of permanence. In some spots, the layering is so dense that it is impossible to distinguish which culture created which image first, deepening the canyon's mystery. Spirals, handprints, and animal forms appear repeatedly throughout the canyon, but no universal pattern emerges to explain their recurrence. Some motifs may have been ceremonial, others utilitarian, perhaps indicating seasonal events, spiritual beliefs, or social hierarchies. The same symbol can vary in size, depth, or orientation, raising questions about its original meaning. Even among scholars, interpretations diverge, with some emphasizing astronomical connections, others ritual significance, and still others proposing narrative storytelling. Whatever the original intent, the repetition creates a sense of continuity and purpose that spans multiple cultures while simultaneously preserving a veil of ambiguity. The techniques used to carve and paint these markings reveal deliberate craftsmanship and thoughtful planning. Deep-pecked grooves, incised outlines, and mineral-based pigments were applied with care to endure the harsh desert environment. Variations in method reflect the cultural diversity of the creators, each selecting materials and tools suited to their artistic goals and environmental conditions. The durability of the sandstone ensured that these markings could survive centuries of wind, rain, and sun exposure, yet they remain vulnerable to erosion, making careful documentation by modern researchers essential. The differing methods also highlight individual and cultural signatures, hinting at unseen hands shaping the canyon story. Archaeologists examining Sego Canyon have noted chronological contradictions in the carvings, with motifs from widely separated eras appearing almost simultaneously across certain panels. Fremont figures may overlay archaic symbols, and Ute wildlife depictions may border earlier anthropomorphic shapes, defying straightforward timelines. These paradoxes frustrate attempts to establish a linear historical narrative and highlight the complexity of human occupation in the region. The canyon becomes a temporal puzzle, where layers of intention and action are intertwined, creating questions that remain unresolved despite meticulous study. In this sense, the walls themselves function as both record and riddle. Extensive documentation has recorded the precision, density, and diversity of the carvings, yet the purpose behind them remains elusive. Photogrammetry, high-resolution photography, and digital mapping reveal details invisible to the naked eye, including subtle variations in depth, style, and alignment. Yet these technological advances, while enhancing understanding of the physical attributes, do not unravel the human motivations that produced them. The more that is documented, the more apparent it becomes that the site was created with layers of meaning, some of which were deliberately inaccessible or coded for select viewers. Each survey only deepens the mystery. Some motifs may have served as warnings, commemorations, or ritual markers, but the overlapping and diverse forms resist singular interpretation. The juxtaposition of figures from different eras suggests interaction across generations, yet the precise nature of that interaction is unknowable. Were later people aware of previous carvings, and did they intend to respond? Did some marks convey messages intended only for those initiated in cultural traditions now lost? The unanswered questions are central to the canyon's enduring enigma, leaving observers in a liminal space between recognition and mystery. Even the most obvious patterns yield more questions than clarity. Modern indigenous communities regard Sego Canyon as a repository of ancestral memory, linking the carvings to traditions, stories, and spiritual knowledge. While oral histories and cultural insights provide context, they do not fully explain the overlaps or contradictions in the markings. The site's significance is not limited to its age or artistry. It is also a space of cultural resonance where human presence, memory, and landscape converge. Visitors today can sense this continuity, experiencing both a tangible connection to the past and the persistent elusiveness of its secrets. The canyon remains a place where history and mystery intertwine. Walking among the cliffs, one becomes aware of the canyon's layered human presence, the rough sandstone under fingertips, the grooves and depressions etched over centuries, and the subtle interplay of light and shadow. Each panel conveys multiple voices, some subtle, some pronounced, creating an immersive experience where time feels both compressed and expansive. The physicality of the space reinforces the impression that human intent has accumulated here, pressing against stone and air alike, a testimony to centuries of observation, creativity, and ritual without revealing its full story. The quiet wind seems to echo past footsteps, as though the canyon itself remembers. The walls seem suspended between eras, where human endeavour, layered carvings, and the slow erosion of sandstone combine to produce a puzzle that no observer has fully unravelled. Every figure, spiral, and handprint contributes to an ongoing narrative that spans centuries, yet the narrative remains incomplete, its meaning fragmented and ambiguous. Standing in the canyon, one senses both the ambition and the restraint of the people who left these marks, and the stubborn silence of the stone itself, preserving the canyon's secrets against the passage of time. It is a place where human presence is felt long after its craters have vanished. As sunlight shifts across these layered carvings, Sego Canyon continues to conceal the full story of those who came before, leaving only tantalizing fragments for the patient observer. The All-American Man Pictograph. The canyon narrows suddenly, walls rising like guardians over a sun-baked floor where wind scours the rock and dust collects in quiet pools. Among the patterns of erosion and natural fissures, human attention is evident, hints of deliberate marks tracing lines and shadows that shift with the day. Hidden within this rugged landscape, a singular image emerges, a figure painted in bold red, its proportions and stance unlike anything nearby, immediately drawing notice and puzzling observers. This is the All-American Man Pictograph, a creation whose origin and purpose continue to defy explanation, demanding closer scrutiny as one steps cautiously into the alcove. Light filtering through narrow crevices illuminates the canyon walls in shifting patterns, accentuating natural textures that resemble exaggerated forms, giving the impression that the rock itself is alive. Sandstone ridges and small ledges break the monotony of the cliff face, offering surfaces seemingly chosen with care by someone who understood how light, shadow, and perspective could transform simple pigment into something startling. The interplay of sun and stone renders the pictograph simultaneously bold and elusive, as if it were designed to reveal and conceal in equal measure depending on the observer's angle and the hour of day. Nearby surfaces bear faint traces of other markings, some pecked, some painted, yet none share the uncanny realism of the All-American Man. Its body appears nearly human in proportion, yet the style contrasts sharply with known Fremont or archaic motifs in the region. The figure's stance suggests movement or intent, while its limbs and torso convey a sense of familiarity that feels anachronistic against the surrounding petroglyph landscape. Observers are struck not just by its form but by the subtle suggestion that it was created to be seen and remembered, despite its remote and inhospitable location. Closer examination reveals anomalies that confound standard classification. The figure's head, outlined in a distinct oval and featuring angular markings that might be interpreted as facial features, does not match other pictographs from the same era. Its posture and exaggerated proportions hint at a symbolic or representational purpose, yet one that seems to depart from the cultural conventions of the known regional populations. These discrepancies invite speculation, as researchers attempt to reconcile stylistic outliers with the documented traditions, finding themselves increasingly uncertain about their origins. The surrounding archaeological context provides some clues, yet deepens the mystery. Stratigraphic studies indicate that nearby markings were likely created by Fremont communities between roughly 600 and 1250 CE, while archaic images date as far back as 2000 BCE. The All-American Man does not fit neatly into either category. Some researchers suggest that its style could represent a transitional phase, an experiment in representation, or an entirely separate cultural influence now lost to history. Its presence challenges assumptions about the uniformity and temporal boundaries of regional artistic expression. Analysis of the pigments used in the figure reveals further intrigue. Iron oxide and other mineral-based substances provide the vivid red coloration that has endured for centuries. The application is remarkably precise, suggesting careful attention to detail and possibly specialized tools or techniques. Microscopic examination shows traces of layering, indicating that the figure may have been retouched over time or that multiple applications were intended to reinforce its visibility. Such durability speaks to an understanding of both materials and environmental conditions, reinforcing the impression of deliberate and sophisticated creation. Dating attempts, while extensive, yield inconclusive results. Radiocarbon testing of organic binders in pigments is limited, and the stratigraphic context is obscured by natural erosion. Researchers have proposed ranges spanning several centuries, yet none account fully for the stylistic incongruity of the figure. Debate continues as to whether it represents a local innovation, an outsider influence, or a deliberate symbolic anomaly meant to convey meaning beyond conventional knowledge. The uncertainty compounds the pictograph's enigmatic aura, ensuring that every study raises as many questions as it answers. Interpretive theories vary widely. Some suggest the figure may have had a ceremonial function, a guardian or deity intended to be observed at specific times of day or season. Others propose it commemorates an event, a person, or even a visitor whose appearance left a lasting impression. Still others speculate about symbolic or esoteric significance now inaccessible to modern understanding. Each hypothesis, while plausible in part, fails to fully explain why the figure appears so stylistically out of place, leaving the observer suspended in speculation and wonder. The figure's interaction with the surrounding alcove enhances its unsettling presence. Light grazing the wall can make the red form appear almost three-dimensional, as if it steps forward from the rock. Shadows lengthen and shift throughout the day, altering perception of posture and proportion. At certain angles, the figure seems to watch the observer, while at others it appears abstract and flat, creating an eerie tension between reality and illusion. The canyon itself participates in the display, as though the environment has been carefully curated over centuries to amplify the figure's enigmatic qualities. Witnesses often report an uncanny sense of connection or unease when studying the figure, as if it carries a residual energy or intent from the distant past. The more time spent observing, the more the figure's proportions and stance feel both familiar and impossible. Familiar enough to evoke recognition, yet impossible in context, creating a cognitive dissonance that lingers after leaving the site. The effect is subtle, psychological, and persistent, underscoring the power of visual anomaly and human perception in the experience of ancient art. Placed in the broader context of Utah's prehistoric imagery, the All-American Man stands alone. No comparable figure exists in neighbouring sites or within the regional artistic canon. Its solitary presence and anomalous style suggest either a lost cultural tradition, an isolated experiment in representation, or an intentional departure meant to capture attention across time. Its endurance against natural erosion and human observation alike has preserved this anomaly, ensuring that it continues to provoke curiosity and study in every generation that encounters it. The alcove and figure together form a narrative frozen in pigment and stone, an enigma encoded in both form and placement. Each line, each angle, each colour choice conveys intention, yet that intention remains elusive. Despite centuries of study, careful documentation and repeated observation, the figure resists full interpretation. It is a testament to human creativity, but also a reminder of the gaps in knowledge, the mysteries that survive even in well-examined landscapes. Standing there, the observer is reminded that not all human endeavours can be neatly categorised or fully explained. The All-American Man pictograph endures as a puzzle suspended between artistry, culture, and the passage of time. Its anomalous form, striking coloration, and placement within a remote alcove continue to challenge understanding, inviting speculation about the people who created it and the intentions that guided them. It occupies a space between recognition and impossibility, familiar enough to be compelling yet enigmatic enough to defy explanation. Each visit, each study, reinforces both its presence and its secrecy, leaving the figure's story unresolved and tantalizing. Even as modern light fades from the canyon floor, the All-American Man persists in silent watch, a solitary witness whose origin and meaning remain beyond the reach of science. The Fremont cliffside granaries of Range Creek. The wind whispers through empty valleys, carrying sand that etches faint patterns across the desert floor, as if tracing paths invisible to human eyes. In this quiet, the mind naturally searches for signs of human presence, and it is here that subtle anomalies begin to emerge along the cliff sides, small, precise structures clinging to narrow ledges. These are the Fremont cliffside granaries of Range Creek, creations whose origin, purpose, and method of construction continue to defy explanation. The stillness is broken only by distant echoes of rockfalls, each sound travelling farther than expected in the open desert, a subtle reminder of the canyon's solitude and the fragility of those who once dared its heights. Seasonal shifts cast the terrain in ever-changing light, revealing subtle ridges and shadows that suggest forms both natural and deliberate. In early morning or late afternoon, the granaries sometimes vanish into the cliff's textures, as if the rock itself conspires to hide them. Observers note how the interplay of sun and shadow amplifies the sense of isolation, reinforcing the feeling that these structures were meant to remain hidden from casual eyes. The Fremont appear to have understood the canyon's light cycles, as the granaries occupy ledges where sun and shadow meet in dramatic contrast throughout the day. Small birds and lizards move along the ledges, adding life and scale to the scene and emphasizing the audacity of human effort that must have gone into building here. A series of small, precise structures emerges along hidden ledges, their presence so improbable it seems as though gravity itself hesitated before allowing them to exist. Some are barely 3 feet across, yet each is meticulously crafted, its timber frameworks and stone walls aligned to fit the natural contours of the cliffs. From below they appear almost as painted illusions, their forms blending with the sandstone, yet up close, the construction skill becomes undeniable. The isolation of these ledges not only emphasizes the daring of their builders, but also heightens the mystery of why such extreme effort was expended for storage or concealment. The mind instinctively wonders how they lifted materials to these heights without scaffolding or modern tools, leaving the observer in silent awe. Each granary is carefully assembled from sandstone slabs and timber, wedged and balanced with a precision that defies the limited tools likely available to the Fremont people. Stone blocks fit snugly together, creating stable floors and walls, while small wooden beams are anchored into cracks in the rock to support roofs and shelves. Notches and grooves in the timber suggest an understanding of interlocking structures, ensuring stability even as the beams were exposed to sun, wind, and occasional rain. Some granaries show evidence of repair or maintenance, suggesting they were in use for generations. The level of craftsmanship indicates a culture deeply attuned to its environment, capable of executing designs that harmonized with the natural contours of near-vertical cliffs. Support beams and platforms fit seamlessly into fissures and protrusions, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of weight distribution and rock stability. In certain cases, beams were likely cut and fitted off-site before being hoisted into place, using ropes or leverage systems lost to history. Archaeologists continue to debate how Fremont builders achieved such feats, particularly on ledges that would challenge even modern climbers. The ingenuity reflected in these structures underscores not just practicality but an intimate knowledge of engineering principles, materials, and the limitations of human endurance in such extreme terrain. The precision of construction raises questions about whether techniques were passed orally, through observation, or guided by a system now lost to time. Though the granary's exact contents remain uncertain, their strategic placement hints at preservation, concealment, or perhaps ceremonial importance lost to time. Corn, beans, and other seeds may have been stored to endure harsh seasons, yet the effort to secure them on precarious ledges raises questions about accessibility. Were only select members of the community allowed to retrieve provisions? Did the placement serve as a protective measure against thieves or wild animals? Each possibility suggests intentionality far beyond mere survival, hinting at cultural priorities now obscured by centuries of desert wind and silence. The absence of debris or signs of frequent human traffic reinforces the notion that these ledges were carefully guarded or restricted. Within the wider context of Fremont culture, few constructions exhibit such daring or ingenuity, making these ledge-bound granaries a singular testament to their builders. While other Fremont sites feature pit houses, storage bins, and cliff dwellings, the cliffside granaries of Range Creek are unmatched in isolation and verticality. They suggest people willing to exploit extreme terrain for safety, secrecy, or perhaps symbolic reasons that remain inaccessible to modern interpretation. These structures, perched where few humans could reach, continue to inspire questions about Fremont knowledge and motivation. Some speculate that their placement could even signal social hierarchy or ritualistic importance, though such interpretations remain speculative. Centuries of wind, water, and occasional intrusions have left their marks, yet many granaries remain intact, defying the erosion that has claimed nearby surfaces. Some timber elements have survived in surprisingly good condition, protected by the alcove's shelter and dry climate. Stone walls show cracks and weathering but still maintain structural integrity, hinting at the quality of materials chosen and the skill applied in construction. Their endurance raises another layer of mystery. The Fremont knew how to create structures that could withstand centuries, yet the reasons behind their placement continue to elude explanation. The surrounding rocks carry subtle scratch marks, perhaps remnants of ancient scaffolding or climbing techniques, adding yet another unsolved puzzle. Archaeologists approach with caution, measuring, documenting, and speculating, yet the verticality of the terrain limits observation and deepens the sense of mystery. Every expedition requires careful climbing, specialized equipment, and meticulous planning, yet even so, many aspects of the granaries remain inaccessible. This partial perspective forces researchers to rely on inference, piecing together construction methods, probable usage, and cultural significance from incomplete evidence. The fragility and remoteness of the structures add to the suspense, reminding observers that the canyon itself guards its secrets. Each measurement, sketch, and photograph feels like capturing only a fraction of an intentionally hidden story. Those who venture close describe an almost vertiginous awe, the ledges narrowing to a whisper, demanding balance and focus as the mind imagines the hands that once built here. Standing before a granary, the viewer cannot help but feel the scale of ambition required to conceive, transport, and assemble materials in such a location. The tactile connection to the past, sandstone underfoot, wind against the face, and the daunting drop below heightens the mystery of why these structures exist and what they meant to those who built them. The mind instinctively measures the distance, imagining the courage and skill it must have taken to haul supplies and work along these narrow ledges. The cliffside granaries suggest careful planning, mastery of the environment, and perhaps symbolic choices about placement and access that remain undeciphered. Their arrangement along the cliffs may correspond to seasonal patterns, visibility from distant points, or internal social hierarchies, though evidence remains speculative. Each granary's location and construction provoke questions about Fremont's intentions, their understanding of risk and reward, and the cultural values that made such daring storage worthwhile. Their inaccessibility transforms practicality into an enigma, suggesting the Fremont may have been deliberately creating a challenge or statement beyond mere utility. Each ledge, beam, and doorway forms a silent narrative. The structures themselves a puzzle bridging human ingenuity and the enigmatic logic of survival. They stand as reminders of a community capable of extraordinary adaptation, using ingenuity to protect, preserve, and perhaps ritualize elements of daily life in a harsh, remote landscape. The interplay of natural formation and human construction creates a space that is at once practical and mysterious, functional and symbolic, revealing skill while withholding full understanding. Visitors leave with a lingering sense of vertigo, the canyon's silence amplifying the weight of centuries of human ingenuity suspended above them. High above the desert floor, the Fremont cliffside granaries remain suspended in silence, their secrets untouched by time or human curiosity. The tower ruin of Range Creek Canyon. From a distance, the tower rises like a solitary sentinel, its rough-hewn stones catching the sunlight and casting long, angular shadows across the valley floor. The structure appears impossibly vertical against the flat expanse of desert, its presence at once commanding and enigmatic. Scholars recognize it as a Fremont construction, yet its sheer audacity and isolated location have long defied understanding. Each layer of stone hints at deliberate design, yet the rationale behind its height and placement remains a mystery. The surrounding cliffs and mesas frame it like a stage, emphasizing its isolation and inviting speculation about why anyone would undertake such a monumental effort in this unforgiving terrain. The approach to its base is deceptive, a maze of loose boulders and narrow ledges that seem designed to discourage even the most determined visitor. The ground slopes unpredictably, punctuated by hidden crevices and eroded gullies, making each step a careful negotiation with gravity. Desert flora, sparse yet resilient, creeps across fractured rock, a silent testament to survival in extreme conditions. Wind gusts carry the scent of dust and stone, and at times a distant coyote call punctuates the silence, reinforcing the remoteness of the site. Navigating this terrain demands vigilance, yet the difficulty only magnifies the sense of discovery when the tower finally dominates the horizon. Once standing before the structure, its scale becomes astonishing, each wall carefully stacked, forming a vertical geometry that appears improbably stable for its age. Some stones measure several feet in length, laid with care to create walls that rise multiple stories. Mortar, now hardened and weathered, binds the stone with remarkable durability, hinting at techniques that modern engineers still find impressive. The tower's verticality contrasts sharply with the horizontal expanses of the surrounding plateau, giving it an otherworldly presence, as if it were deliberately designed to stand apart from both nature and nearby human habitation. Close inspection reveals precise joints and mortar placements, hinting at construction methods that remain largely unexplained by modern archaeological knowledge. Stones fit together with careful precision, forming corners and edges that resist collapse despite centuries of wind, rain, and seismic activity. Some joints suggest the use of wooden scaffolding or temporary supports, yet there is no clear evidence for how such tools could have been stabilized at this height. Every stone tells a story of labor, planning, and ingenuity, and each imperfection speaks to human hands navigating the limits of their environment. The craftsmanship implies knowledge of balance, weight, and structural integrity that challenges assumptions about Fremont's capabilities. Inside, the tower reveals a series of chambers and narrow passageways, each space meticulously proportioned, yet leaving questions about their intended function. Small rooms stacked above one another appear to have been designed for storage, observation, or perhaps ceremonial purposes, though no single explanation fits perfectly. Doorways are low and passages narrow, requiring visitors to crouch or squeeze, adding to the sense of deliberate spatial constraint. Every surface bears the wear of centuries, yet some walls remain smooth, as though intentionally prepared for repeated use. The interior invites examination but offers only hints, encouraging as much speculation as it does discovery. Sunlight filters through narrow openings, illuminating interior corners and casting patterns that shift dramatically with the passing hours, suggesting a deliberate awareness of natural cycles. Certain apertures align with the rising sun during solstices or seasonal changes, a subtle interplay that may have guided the Fremont in tracking time or ceremonial events. Dust motes hang in the beams of light, highlighting the empty chambers and the silence of absence. The interaction of sunlight and shadow transforms the interior throughout the day, making each visit unique, as though the tower itself choreographs an ancient, imperceptible ritual, only partially understood by modern observers. In the wider context of Fremont architecture, no other structure matches its combination of vertical daring, craftsmanship, and isolation, making it a singular enigma. While the Fremont built dwellings, storage pits, and cliffside granaries, the tower stands alone in its freestanding audacity. Its construction suggests not just functional ingenuity, but an aesthetic sensibility and an awareness of visibility, scale, and presence. Comparisons to neighbouring structures reveal its singularity, reinforcing the impression that the tower was conceived for reasons beyond mere survival, perhaps as a symbolic, social, or ceremonial statement meant to endure in both form and memory. Weathering and erosion have left their mark, yet many structural elements remain remarkably intact, as if the builders understood how to outlast centuries of wind, rain, and sun. Stones at the base show smooth rounding from centuries of water runoff, while upper walls retain sharp edges and stable alignment. Small fissures and cracks appear occasionally, yet the tower resists collapse, challenging assumptions about the longevity of materials and methods. The durability raises further questions. Were the builders aware of the harsh environmental conditions in a way modern observers can scarcely appreciate? Or is the structure's endurance an accidental miracle of technique and location? Speculation about its purpose abounds: lookout, ceremonial site, or storage, but tangible evidence offers no definitive answers, and each theory seems as plausible as it is mysterious. Archaeologists have debated whether the height allowed surveillance over long distances, or whether the tower marked a sacred or ritual boundary. Some suggest it may have served as a symbolic connection between earth and sky, while others argue for practical storage or refuge during floods or raids. Yet no artifacts conclusively clarify its use, leaving interpretations to hover between logic and imagination, each idea adding layers to the unresolved puzzle. Those who examine the tower today describe an uneasy mixture of awe and vertigo, a recognition of both human ingenuity and the risks undertaken to construct it. Standing beside its walls, the scale of labour required to lift stones, assemble floors and navigate narrow ledges becomes almost tangible. The mind struggles to reconcile the small population of Fremont people with the magnitude of effort and precision evident here. Each creaking timber and sun-warmed stone seems to echo the whispers of ancient labourers, creating an uneasy intimacy with hands long gone yet palpably present in the architecture. Nearby ruins suggest the tower was part of a broader settlement network, yet its height, isolation and form make it unlike anything else in the region. While granaries and dwellings are scattered throughout Range Creek Canyon, none share its vertical, daring or freestanding structure. Paths connecting the ruins are indirect, treacherous and often hidden, reinforcing the sense that the tower was meant to be seen but not easily approached. The contrast between accessible settlements and this vertical anomaly underscores its mysterious intent, inviting further inquiry into why it was built and who may have been privileged to occupy or observe it. Every angle, every stone, every shadow invites questions that remain unanswered, leaving the imagination to wander where evidence cannot reach. The tower's defiance of gravity, its precise construction, and its audacious location persist as a silent challenge to all who seek to understand it. Winds howl through empty corridors, birds nest in inaccessible crevices, and the desert continues to reclaim what is not anchored to human activity. Researchers leave with measured notes, sketches, and photographs, yet the structure's full story remains just out of reach, teasing both intellect and curiosity in equal measure. Even centuries later, the tower ruin of Range Creek Canyon stands defiant, a vertical enigma that guards its secrets from all who attempt to decipher them. The ancestral Puebloan roadways of Cedar Mesa. The desert stretches endlessly under a burning sun, yet etched across the sandstone and sage are long, straight ribbons of stone and soil, unnervingly precise paths whose purpose has eluded explanation for centuries. From a distance they appear almost deliberate, as if some ancient hand had drawn lines across the arid expanse with geometric precision. These paths, carved into the landscape by the ancestral Puebloans, defy expectations for a people often thought limited to settlements, granaries and cliff dwellings. Each line stretches for miles, cutting across ridges, mesas and washes, inviting questions about the skill, knowledge and intention behind their construction. The straightness of the roads, sometimes extending unbroken for several miles, is all the more remarkable given the rugged terrain they traverse. Surveyors and aerial researchers first drew attention to these roadways in the 20th century, noting patterns invisible from the ground that hinted at deliberate planning. From cliffs and aircraft, the linearity of the roads becomes apparent, contrasting sharply with the random topography of Cedar Mesa. Archaeologists began mapping them, noting their alignment with distant landmarks and possible settlement clusters. The precision of their layouts sparked debate. Were they functional, ceremonial, symbolic, or something else entirely? Whatever the purpose, their existence challenges assumptions about the limits of ancestral Puebloan engineering. Closer inspection shows careful levelling along many stretches, sometimes accompanied by low embankments or cleared surfaces, subtle indicators of intentional design. The width of the roads varies, occasionally just a few metres across, yet maintaining remarkable consistency over undulating terrain. Small stones line some segments, possibly marking boundaries or aiding in erosion control, but the patterns remain ambiguous. The construction quality raises questions about the tools and labour required to maintain such exactness, suggesting both foresight and meticulous effort that has endured for centuries. The paths cross steep ridges, navigate narrow washes, and cut across uneven mesas, presenting challenges that would be difficult even with modern surveying equipment. Some sections climb abrupt inclines, where the earth and rock offer little support for a straight course. The effort required to maintain such alignment indicates careful planning, coordination, and an understanding of the landscape that modern observers struggle to fully explain. Travellers attempting to follow the roads today often find themselves puzzled by the combination of practicality and improbability they represent. Certain stretches of the roadways maintain geometric straightness for miles, occasionally curving towards distant landmarks or other settlements, suggesting a sophisticated awareness of orientation. Some researchers speculate that these alignments may have had symbolic significance, linking distant ceremonial sites, water sources, or astronomical markers. Yet, despite the regularity and precision, no conclusive evidence confirms these theories, leaving the purpose of these pathways shrouded in mystery. Each alignment seems intentional, yet its function remains frustratingly opaque. The surrounding mesas and cliffs frame the roads with stark, unforgiving beauty, emphasizing the audacity of cutting long, uninterrupted paths through rugged terrain. Sagebrush and hardy desert flora cling to the edges of some roads, softening the lines yet highlighting their continuity. Seasonal rains and flash floods leave subtle impressions on the pathways, occasionally obscuring their course but never fully erasing them. Nature interacts with these roads in ways that underscore both their vulnerability and resilience, adding layers of mystery to their enduring presence. Connections between the roads and nearby settlements, granaries, or ceremonial locations hint at potential purpose, though no evidence provides a definitive answer. Some roads appear to lead directly to cliff dwellings, others to open plateaus, and some terminate abruptly with no visible destination. The seeming randomness of terminations complicates interpretations, yet the consistency of construction across hundreds of miles suggests intentionality rather than coincidence. Whatever the roads were meant to accomplish, their creators understood the land and its possibilities in ways that remain only partially understood today. Despite centuries of exposure to wind, sun, and occasional flooding, the roadways remain perceptible, their persistence a silent testament to construction that defies time. Erosion has smoothed some sections, yet the lines remain remarkably intact across great distances. Even small depressions and embankments resist obliteration, hinting at deliberate techniques to mitigate environmental wear. This endurance adds to the intrigue, leaving modern observers to wonder whether the road's longevity was intentional or an unexpected byproduct of careful placement and materials. Theories about their function are varied and often contradictory. Some propose trade or migration routes, facilitating the movement of goods and people across challenging terrain. Others suggest ceremonial or pilgrimage paths, possibly connecting sacred sites with seasonal or astronomical significance. Still more speculate about practical markers for herding, resource collection, or territorial boundaries. Despite decades of research, no artifacts or inscriptions conclusively confirm any single purpose, leaving the road suspended in uncertainty, a testament to human ingenuity and enduring enigma. Those who traverse the roads today report a mixture of disorientation and wonder, walking along seemingly endless straight lines over mesas, cliffs, and uneven ground creates an eerie sense of continuity in a landscape that otherwise feels chaotic. Travellers often remark on the physical and psychological challenge of following these paths, noting the contrast between their simplicity in appearance and the complexity of their construction. The experience evokes both awe and unease, a direct encounter with a mystery that has withstood centuries of human curiosity. Comparisons with other regional networks reveal only partial similarities, emphasizing the singularity of the Cedar Mesa roads. While linear routes appear elsewhere in the southwest, none match the combination of length, straightness, and integration with natural features found here. This uniqueness reinforces the sense that the Cedar Mesa roadways were conceived with an intent beyond ordinary travel, challenging historians and archaeologists to reconsider assumptions about ancestral Puebloan society and its capabilities. Even as shadows stretch across the mesa at dusk, the roads persist like faint whispers of an ancient intention, their straight lines tracing secrets that refuse to be fully understood. The fading light highlights depressions, embankments, and subtle features, creating a shifting, almost spectral landscape that transforms with every hour. Walking along them, one senses not only the labour and ingenuity of those who built them, but also the silent presence of questions that will likely remain unanswered. These paths endure as a haunting testament to human ambition carved into one of the harshest landscapes in North America. At present, the ancestral Puebloan roadways of Cedar Mesa stretch across the desert like riddles in stone, daring anyone to uncover the intentions of those who carved them so long ago. The House on Fire. Ruin, optical illusion. As the morning sun climbs over the horizon, the ruined stone walls appear to flare with orange and red hues, casting the unsettling illusion of fire across the canyon face. The effect is astonishingly lifelike, transforming ordinary sandstone into something almost animate. The canyon itself seems to breathe, light flickering in ways that mimic flames. Photographs capture colour but not motion, leaving observers spellbound. Subtle crevices and carefully positioned stones interact with sunlight, producing a spectacle that vanishes in moments. Early visitors recorded their disbelief, unable to reconcile what they saw with ordinary rock formations, leaving the illusion suspended between reality and imagination. Early explorers marvelled at how fleeting the illusion could be, shifting dramatically as shadows and angles changed. Journals from the early 20th century described the fire-like effect disappearing within minutes depending on the time of day, season and weather. Observers often moved to different vantage points, only to see the flames vanish or flicker elsewhere. Modern imaging can track the effect, but it cannot reproduce the visceral impact of witnessing it firsthand. These records show that each viewing is unique, emphasizing both unpredictability and precision in the natural interplay of light and stone, leaving lingering questions about whether the builders recognized or intended the phenomenon. The structure itself, a modest assemblage of sandstone blocks and aligned walls, appears ordinary until the sun strikes at the right angle. Then, geometry and light conspire to produce the fiery illusion. Construction techniques reflect ancestral Puebloan practices, masonry, mortar fill and strategic orientation, but the effect suggests remarkable sophistication. Every block, crevice and wall edge contributes to the visual spectacle. The precision elevates the ruin from a simple dwelling to a carefully orchestrated interaction between human design and natural forces. Visitors today still find themselves mesmerized by how environmental elements and construction merge to create a display that seems almost impossible to replicate. Shadows bend and stretch across the canyon floor, enhancing the impression of flames as the sun moves. Boulders and cliff faces frame the ruin, creating subtle visual cues that amplify motion and depth. Even a light breeze can shift leaves or dust, making the illusion more dynamic. Observers are captivated, unsure where human design ends and natural spectacle begins. Attempts to recreate the effect elsewhere fail, highlighting the site's uniqueness. The interplay of light, terrain and stone produces a constantly shifting canvas that seems to engage with those who watch. Each moment offers a new pattern, reinforcing the mystery of intentionality. Its location is remarkable, perched on a ledge overlooking the surrounding mesa and other ancestral Puebloan sites. Elevation allows sunlight to strike walls in precise ways at certain times, suggesting knowledge of celestial patterns or environmental cycles. Proximity to trails, water and other settlements implies deliberate planning. Orientation may have been chosen to maximize visual impact, blending practicality with subtle artistic or symbolic intent. Observers cannot help but sense that placement was purposeful, designed to merge utility with spectacle. The canyon encourages reflection as viewers consider how environment, construction and perception converge in a momentary, almost magical display. Natural depressions and angled boulders subtly guide sunlight across the ruin, reinforcing the fiery effect throughout the day. Light interacts with every surface, producing flickers and patches that resemble real flames. Shadows shift gradually yet predictably, creating visual movement that seems almost alive. This careful orchestration is unmatched in other nearby ruins. Researchers note that environmental alignment, stone coloration, and structural positioning are combined with extraordinary precision. Visitors consistently describe the effect as mesmerizing, a deliberate dance of perception and reality. The illusion seems to challenge the observer's senses, raising questions about what the ancestral Puebloans intended and how much they understood about optics and human perception. Scientific analysis confirms that light angles and stone color produce the illusion, but the exact positioning of the walls suggests deliberate knowledge. Archaeologists model sunlight and shadow, revealing how particular alignments exaggerate the impression of fire. Iron content and weathering in sandstone enhance the orange and red tones, increasing visual intensity. Yet the overall effect remains difficult to explain fully, given its complexity and consistency. Even with advanced technology, the sensory experience cannot be fully captured. Visitors repeatedly report a sense of wonder that transcends analytical description. The site demonstrates how human skill and environmental awareness can produce effects that continue to elude full scientific understanding. Viewers often experience disorientation, the eye drawn to flickering light that suggests movement. Peripheral vision amplifies the effect, making the illusion appear alive. Human perception interprets subtle cues as energy or motion even when none exists. The ruin seems to respond to the observer, creating a dynamic relationship between human senses and environment. This interaction produces awe and unease simultaneously, as if the canyon itself is aware of those who watch. Moments of hesitation and disbelief are common, reinforcing the sense that perception can be manipulated. The effect encourages contemplation about the line between reality and illusion, and the skill required to achieve it. Compared to other ancient sites, the House on Fire ruin is unique in its combination of environmental manipulation and construction. Natural phenomena can create visual effects elsewhere, but few sites integrate architectural design to produce consistent optical illusions. Scholars note that the interplay of light, shadow, and placement demonstrates advanced environmental understanding. Attempts to replicate similar illusions in other locations largely fail, emphasizing the site's singularity. Even among the extensive canyon networks of the region, the precision and clarity of the effect remain unparalleled. Its mystery has fascinated archaeologists and casual visitors alike, sparking debate over intentionality versus coincidence. A modern observer ascending the canyon trail may pause, unsure whether the flames are real or imagined. The visual effect confounds expectation, challenging the mind's ability to distinguish perception from reality. Photographs fail to capture the illusion's motion, leaving direct observation as the only reliable experience. The interplay of sunlight, wall angles, and shadows produces an almost theatrical presentation, ephemeral yet remarkably precise. Visitors report feelings of awe mingled with tension, a sense of witnessing something carefully designed, yet beyond complete comprehension. This unique experience emphasizes how human perception interacts with architectural and natural design to create enduring mystery. Questions persist. Did the ancestral Puebloans intend this effect, or was it discovered accidentally? Scholars speculate on ritual, artistic, or symbolic purposes, yet no consensus exists. The orientation, placement, and construction suggest planning, while the environmental conditions required are so precise that coincidence seems unlikely. Researchers consider seasonal variations in sunlight, the sun's angle at solstices, and stone coloration. While direct evidence of intent is absent, the phenomenon continues to provoke curiosity. The ruin stands as a testament to observation, ingenuity, and environmental interaction. Its purpose may remain unknown, but its ability to confound observers persists across centuries. As dusk settles, the ruin holds its secret, a fusion of human design and natural spectacle that challenges perception. Subtle shadows lengthen across walls, enhancing the visual effect. Observers confront the ambiguity of what they see, questioning whether their senses deceive them. The site endures as a silent dialogue between past and present, structure and sunlight, offering a fleeting but profound demonstration of human understanding merged with natural forces. Each encounter leaves lingering uncertainty, recognition that reality and illusion may coexist within a single moment. The House on Fire ruin endures as a silent conjurer of light and shadow, daring anyone who stands before it to decipher whether its flames were meant to burn or merely to mesmerize. The Moab Man Petroglyph and the question of antiquity. The Moab Man figure presents a puzzling enigma, its human-like form carved with precision that defies conventional expectations of prehistoric artistry. Standing alone on a weathered sandstone panel, the figure has prompted generations of archaeologists to question its origin, cultural affiliation, and age. Unlike nearby petroglyphs depicting animals, hunting scenes, or ritual motifs, this carving conveys a presence both solitary and deliberate. Observers repeatedly note its proportions and posture seem unfamiliar compared to known Fremont or ancestral Puebloan imagery, suggesting a knowledge or intent that eludes modern understanding. Every line and contour challenges assumptions about the capabilities and priorities of ancient people in the region. Researchers first documented the Moab Man decades ago, recording astonishment at the figure's unusual features and immediate questions about its antiquity. Early field notes describe observers' cautious fascination, emphasizing the ambiguity between artistry and natural erosion. Sketches and photographs revealed details invisible to the casual eye, capturing elongated limbs, an abstracted face, and a symmetry that defied coincidence. Local historians debated its significance, weighing the potential of ceremonial symbolism against simple human representation. Even in early accounts, scholars acknowledged the difficulty of aligning Moab Man with established regional stylistic sequences, leaving its true origin a persistent mystery that continues to intrigue modern study. Examination of tool marks and stone composition provides subtle yet critical evidence about the figure's creation. Close inspection reveals incisions that are deliberate, consistent, and meticulously placed, indicating a practiced hand rather than random scratching. Geochemical analysis of the sandstone confirms mineral patterns that affect coloration and wear, which, combined with weathering, can obscure precise dating. Scientists have noted that the figure's apparent depth and edge sharpness correspond to erosion rates that complicate age estimation. While laboratory techniques like micro-erosion analysis provide clues, the results remain open to interpretation. Each finding amplifies the tension between what is physically observable and what can be conclusively determined. The figure's proportions continue to defy classification within known regional styles. Limbs appear elongated, torsos slightly exaggerated, and facial features abstracted to the point of ambiguity. Unlike conventional Fremont or ancestral Puebloan petroglyphs, which emphasize practical or symbolic representation, Moab Man's abstraction hints at unusual intent. Scholars debate whether these anomalies result from stylistic innovation, ritual significance, or temporal distance from documented traditions. Even casual observers note the figure's visual impact, describing a sense of unnatural familiarity in its stance and shape. This dissonance between expectation and reality deepens the mystery, making the petroglyph an artifact that challenges interpretation rather than simply illustrating human presence. Dating attempts have produced conflicting and inconclusive results, fueling controversy over the figure's antiquity. Radiocarbon testing of nearby organic deposits provides a general temporal frame, yet cannot definitively assign age to the carving itself. Stratigraphic analysis and comparative erosion studies offer additional hints, suggesting the panel has been exposed for centuries, though whether it spans millennia remains unresolved. Scholars remain divided, some proposing an early Fremont period origin, while others speculate about a far earlier human presence. This uncertainty creates a space where fact, probability, and imagination intersect, leaving Moab Man poised between scientific observation and the possibility of extraordinary antiquity. Unlike neighbouring depictions of everyday life or regional fauna, the Moab Man stands alone, as if intentionally distinct. Its isolation raises questions about cultural function. Was it symbolic, commemorative, or merely an artistic experiment? The deliberate separation from other carvings magnifies its enigmatic quality, creating a psychological resonance for those who view it. Observers often note a tension in the visual field, a sense that the figure is aware of its surroundings in ways no ordinary carving would suggest. By departing from conventional narrative scenes, Moab Man challenges assumptions about prehistoric priorities, inviting speculation while withholding definitive answers. Advanced imaging techniques have uncovered fine abrasion patterns invisible to the naked eye. High-resolution photography, 3D scanning, and chemical mapping reveal subtle details, from delicate tool scratches to minuscule surface textures. These features underscore the figure's precision, suggesting purposeful design beyond ordinary artistic expression. Yet even with technology, the petroglyph's creator remains unknown. Observers report that seeing the details firsthand produces an unsettling awareness of skill and intent that cannot be fully quantified. Each mark reinforces the notion of deliberate craftsmanship while simultaneously amplifying the mystery, leaving the human mind to grapple with the implications of intention across centuries. Witnesses often describe an unsettling cognitive tension when observing the figure, a sensation of recognition mingled with disbelief. The mind attempts to interpret familiar human forms while simultaneously registering stylistic anomalies, creating an almost hypnotic engagement. Peripheral perception amplifies irregularities, making the figure seem dynamic despite being carved into solid stone. This perceptual interplay mirrors the broader challenge of interpreting evidence from the distant past. Every observation is filtered through human expectation, and every anomaly provokes curiosity or skepticism. Moab Man's power lies not just in its form, but in its ability to compel reflection on what human history may hold beyond documented knowledge. Minimal erosion and weathering have altered the figure subtly, blurring edges and softening lines in ways that obscure its original precision. These changes complicate attempts to interpret stylistic intent and chronological placement. Even expert observers struggle to determine whether certain irregularities are deliberate or incidental. Despite this, patterns remain visible that hint at careful planning, suggesting that the figure's creator accounted for both surface and long-term exposure. The combination of permanence and impermanence enhances the sense of mystery, positioning the petroglyph as a relic that simultaneously reveals and conceals its story across centuries. Comparative analysis highlights the uniqueness of Moab Man in relation to other petroglyphs throughout Utah. While regional panels depict familiar animals, human figures, or symbolic motifs, none present the same combination of abstraction, isolation, and ambiguous antiquity. The contrast emphasizes both the artistic and temporal anomalies inherent to this site. Researchers often cite these differences when debating whether the figure represents a previously unknown cultural expression or an extraordinary extension of known traditions. Each comparison deepens intrigue, demonstrating how one artifact can provoke reassessment of broader historical narratives while resisting definitive placement within them. Every new study seems to raise more questions than answers, reinforcing the sense that certainty is elusive. Archaeologists weigh the evidence of erosion, tool marks, and stylistic analysis against the impossibility of fully verifying age. This tension between observable fact and unresolved ambiguity drives continued investigation. Even tentative conclusions are hedged with caveats, acknowledging that the figure may never be fully understood. Moab Man thus exists as both artifact and challenge, compelling a reconsideration of assumptions about human presence, creativity, and longevity in the region, while remaining intentionally opaque to definitive interpretation. Observing the panel, one feels a connection across time, as though the figure silently demands recognition of its creator's knowledge and intent. The petroglyph embodies a dialogue between human ingenuity and the erosive forces of nature, preserving both artistry and ambiguity. Each viewing reinforces the tension between familiarity and strangeness, certainty and mystery. The figure invites reflection on how ancient humans perceive themselves and their world, offering only fragments of understanding. Despite centuries of study, the Moab Man continues to resist complete interpretation, leaving viewers suspended in wonder and curiosity about its origin and meaning. Moab Man remains etched in stone and memory, daring anyone who studies it to question not just when it was made, but how much of human history remains hidden in plain sight. The 9 Mile Canyon Great Hunt Panel. Energy seems to surge from the stone as the bison and hunters are captured mid-motion, creating a scene that feels alive despite the centuries. Each etched figure conveys not just form but intent, the chase rendered with astonishing dynamism from the arch of a bison's back to the tense pull of a hunter's bow. The panel stretches along the canyon wall, each figure precisely spaced, suggesting both planning and narrative awareness. Scientists and visitors alike note that, even after decades of study, the carvings continue to elude complete understanding, leaving questions about the creator's skill and the cultural context of this impossible, ancient artistry. Observers in the early 20th century recorded astonishment at the density and detail of the carvings, remarking on how their precision defied expectations for the region. Surveyors and anthropologists meticulously documented the panel, noting hundreds of figures packed into a relatively small expanse, with hunters and bison interacting in ways that implied choreography. Early sketches and photographs reveal that even under natural erosion, the carvings retained extraordinary clarity. Scholars at the time debated whether the level of sophistication suggested a ceremonial purpose, an educational tool, or a more mysterious intent, and the ambiguity only deepened as fieldwork revealed no comparable panel nearby. Microscopic analysis reveals that every line was methodically incised, hinting at a level of foresight and craftsmanship rarely attributed to ancient artisans in this area. Modern techniques expose subtle grooves and overlapping strokes, demonstrating that the craters were not working haphazardly but carefully layering depth, direction, and proportion to evoke lifelike movement. The precision challenges assumptions about the tools and methods available at the time, suggesting both technical knowledge and artistic instinct. The way certain lines taper and overlap, guiding the viewer's eye along the hunt, adds an almost cinematic quality to the panel that continues to confound experts in prehistoric art. The positioning of the figures conveys a story of pursuit and coordination, a narrative unfolding across the sandstone rather than a simple depiction of wildlife. Each hunter's stance, each bison's tilt, seems deliberately chosen to create tension and rhythm, telling a story that might have been understood by contemporaneous viewers yet remains opaque to modern observers. Some sequences suggest flanking maneuvers or ambushes, others imply moments of exhaustion or confrontation, as if the panel itself functions as a visual chronicle of survival. Scholars have struggled to reconcile the narrative fluidity with conventional interpretations of Fremont or Ute rock art traditions, further deepening the mystery. Surrounding panels pale in comparison, emphasizing the remarkable composition, scale, and dynamic interplay of the great hunt figures. Nearby carvings, while culturally significant, display simpler motifs and less coherent storytelling, highlighting the uniqueness of the Great Hunt panel. The contrast raises questions about why this particular site warranted such careful attention and what events or beliefs prompted its creation. Archaeologists note that even subtle variations in line depth and figure overlap indicate intentional hierarchy and pacing. It seems the panel was more than decorative. It was carefully orchestrated to convey movement, tension, and perhaps knowledge that remains just beyond reach. Interpretations range from ceremonial instruction to ritual representation, yet none fully explain why the hunt is rendered with such deliberate precision and energy. Anthropologists have proposed that the carvings may have taught hunting strategy or honoured spiritual beliefs, but the sheer complexity and scale of the panel challenge straightforward explanations. There are no surviving texts, and oral traditions offer only fragmentary insight. The uncertainty surrounding the intent enhances the panel's aura, leaving a lingering question of whether the craters were documenting reality, conveying myth, or expressing something entirely lost to history. Shadows and changing sunlight transform the carvings as the day progresses, animating the chase and suggesting an awareness of natural light in their design. Early mornings cast long streaks that accentuate the curvature of the bison's back, while afternoon rays highlight hunters' extended arms and taut bows. The play of light and shadow shifts the visual narrative subtly, creating fleeting moments when the panel seems to move before the viewer's eyes. This interaction between stone and sunlight may have been intentional, a way for the carvings to communicate differently across hours and seasons, heightening both their mystery and their aesthetic power. High-resolution imaging uncovers subtle abrasions and overlapping lines, reinforcing the impression that the panel was executed with extraordinary care and intent. 3D scans reveal faint elements invisible to the naked eye, including figures partially superimposed on others, perhaps to indicate sequence or importance. These hidden details suggest the panel may have been revised or enhanced over time, hinting at a living tradition of artistry rather than a single creation event. Chemical analysis of the stone surface shows that patina formation and erosion patterns complicate dating, leaving scholars to wonder how long the panel has preserved its intricate motion. Dating attempts produce a wide spectrum of possibilities, as patina, erosion, and surrounding material offer clues, but no definitive timeline for the carvings. Radiocarbon dating of nearby organic material suggests the panel could be several centuries old, yet variations in weathering imply it may be much older. This ambiguity challenges conventional chronologies of Fremont or Ute occupation, prompting speculation about the transfer of artistic knowledge across generations. Some researchers even suggest the possibility of earlier, unknown influences, a theory both controversial and tantalizing, given the panel's sophistication. Viewers often sense a tension within the panel, a suspended drama that seems to persist across the millennia, as though the hunt has never truly ended. The alignment of figures, the repeated motifs, and the careful depiction of movement create a lingering sense of anticipation, almost like the stone itself is holding its breath. Scholars studying perception note that human eyes and minds respond to this arrangement as if it were a scene in motion, enhancing the panel's immersive impact. It is a rare example where static art seems to transcend its medium, inviting interpretation and awe simultaneously. The precision and sophistication of the scene challenge conventional ideas about prehistoric artistic capability, prompting reflection on what knowledge may have existed far earlier than thought. Questions about social organisation, artistic apprenticeship, and technical skill naturally arise. Could this level of composition have required collaborative effort, or a single visionary artisan? Comparisons to other regional carvings continue to astonish researchers who find no exact analogues in either motion depiction or narrative complexity. Every investigation uncovers more evidence of deliberate intent, yet the core mystery of its creation remains untouched. Every glance reveals new details, from subtle gestures to nuanced spacing, each hinting at skill and intention that remain frustratingly mysterious. The panel seems to invite repeated study, revealing fresh insights with each observation. Hunters appear poised at varying distances from their prey, bison muscles are emphasized in precise strokes, and minor elements, tiny etched tools, faint footprints, suggest an attentiveness to environment and context rarely seen in ancient art. This layered richness makes the panel a visual puzzle, simultaneously a historical record and an enigma that refuses complete interpretation. The Great Hunt panel is a frozen drama of motion and strategy, quietly daring anyone who studies it to imagine the vanished hands and minds that orchestrated this chase long ago. The Fremont clay figurines. Tiny hands and exaggerated features emerge from hardened clay, revealing figurines whose purpose continues to baffle archaeologists and enthusiasts alike. Found scattered across Fremont settlements in Utah, these small sculptures carry an aura of intentionality that seems far beyond casual artistry. Their fragile forms have survived centuries of shifting soil, erosion, and occasional floods, leaving modern researchers both awed and perplexed. The discovery of dozens of figurines within confined dwelling spaces suggests careful placement, yet no text or oral record explains why such figures existed. Each object feels deliberately alive, as if frozen in thought or gesture, inviting an uneasy fascination with its silent story. Close inspection exposes minute tool marks along each limb and face, evidence of meticulous effort and an intimate understanding of the medium. The grooves and indentations reveal tools made specifically for shaping soft clay, and subtle finger impressions hint at a tactile, hands-on process rather than the use of molds. Scientists note that the precision of these markings requires dexterity and patience, suggesting the makers had a highly developed artistic skill set. In some examples, tiny holes and hollowed sections appear at unlikely angles, indicating purposes or techniques now lost to memory, further deepening the mystery surrounding these diminutive yet complex creations. The figurines vary in scale, some barely a few inches tall, others imposing despite their modest size, each posture suggesting deliberate motion or intent. Certain figures appear hunched or kneeling, while others stand upright with commanding poise, their limbs often exaggerated or distorted in ways that defy simple anatomical logic. Researchers have debated whether these variations reflect social hierarchy, spiritual symbolism, or narrative storytelling, yet the lack of contemporaneous explanations leaves only conjecture. The careful shaping of torsos and heads implies observation of human or animal forms, though many exaggerations hint at abstract concepts or rituals. Each variation hints at a world simultaneously familiar and enigmatic. Subtle variations in facial expression hint at emotion or identity, yet no records survive to explain whether these were portraits, archetypes, or ritual symbols. Some figurines exhibit serene, contemplative faces, while others convey tension or agitation through slight tilts and carved indentations. Scholars have noted that these differences may indicate individual roles, spiritual states, or mythological references now lost to time. The challenge lies in interpreting intent without imposing modern assumptions, a task complicated by the absence of supporting artifacts or textual explanations. Each gaze and tilt carries a whisper of human experience yet remains deliberately opaque. In relation to other Fremont artifacts, these clay figures display an unusual attention to proportion, balance, and nuanced detail not typically found elsewhere in the region. Unlike utilitarian pottery or functional items, the figurines combine miniature scale with delicate, precise craftsmanship. Limbs, torsos, and heads are moulded with thoughtful asymmetry, suggesting the maker had an understanding of movement and presence that defies the presumed simplicity of prehistoric tools. Researchers point out that reproducing such detail with limited resources would have required both knowledge of material properties and significant patience, raising questions about the cultural value placed upon these objects. Certain elements defy explanation entirely, from unnaturally elongated limbs to hollowed cavities whose purpose remains uncertain, provoking more questions than answers. Some figures feature holes in the torso, circular openings in the head, or exaggerated extremities that serve no obvious structural or symbolic purpose. These anomalies resist conventional interpretations, challenging assumptions about their function. They may have been used in ceremonies, storytelling, or even as teaching tools, but the exact meaning remains speculative. The contradictions between apparent intent and inexplicable form create a lingering tension in the study of these artifacts, reinforcing the sense that they contain knowledge now irretrievably lost. Despite centuries of burial, traces of pigment and firing technique persist, allowing modern scientists to reconstruct methods while leaving many aspects mysterious. Residual mineral stains suggest the use of natural dyes for accentuating features, while variations in clay composition reveal deliberate choices by ancient hands. Firing appears uneven in some cases, possibly due to experimentation with heat sources or attempts to achieve particular textures. Even these small clues, however, offer more ambiguity than certainty. The combination of meticulous shaping with inconsistent firing underscores a duality in the figurines. They are at once purposeful and puzzling, functional and enigmatic, demanding observation yet resisting full understanding. Each figurine seems to embody a fragment of society, gender roles, spiritual beliefs, or social status. Yet the underlying logic behind their creation remains obscured. Figures interpreted as male, female, or animal forms appear alongside ambiguous shapes, hinting at rituals or storytelling methods beyond current comprehension. Some may have functioned as symbolic guardians, others as representations of communal memory, while a few could be abstracted depictions of deities or natural forces. Archaeologists have found figurines placed near hearths, storage spaces, or hidden niches, suggesting intentional positioning. Every detail conveys a deliberate choice, yet the overall message remains unreadable, locked within a culture that vanished long before modern interpretation. Advanced imaging reveals faint patterns and incisions invisible to the naked eye, suggesting symbols or markings lost to time yet intentional in their design. Microscopic examination has uncovered etched lines along torsos, curved scratches around faces, and tiny impressions along limbs hinting at storytelling or coded communication. While chemical analysis has attempted to date these features, no definitive conclusion about meaning has emerged. Some scholars speculate that these marks encoded genealogies, spiritual narratives, or practical knowledge, but the lack of corroborating evidence leaves these ideas in the realm of conjecture. The figurines' silent intricacies suggest communication across millennia, yet the code remains indecipherable. Observers often sense immediacy in these works, as if the figurines were paused mid-action, inviting speculation about the lives and rituals of their creators. Their stances, tilts, and postures evoke movement frozen in time, a gesture of reverence, a step forward, a ritual pose caught in clay. This sensation bridges modern perception with ancient intention, leaving viewers with a quiet sense of connection and disquiet. The tactile quality of the figures, combined with imagined animation, transforms small objects into living witnesses of a vanished world. Yet the deeper significance of this frozen movement remains inaccessible, leaving questions of purpose lingering in the imagination. Minute details, from the tilt of a head to the curve of a finger, resist explanation, hinting at knowledge and skill far beyond what is commonly attributed to the period. Tiny incisions, subtle hollows, and carefully shaped features reflect observation, experimentation, and mastery over clay properties. The precision challenges assumptions about technological and artistic capabilities, suggesting a level of sophistication previously unappreciated in the Fremont cultural record. Each imperceptible mark adds depth to the silent narrative, inviting contemplation of skill, ritual, and meaning that has no surviving explanation, yet continues to captivate study and imagination alike. Looking from different viewpoints, hidden textures and intentional asymmetry transform simple clay shapes into a silent, evocative narrative. Rotating, tilting, and holding the figurines reveal complexities invisible from a single angle. Facial expressions shift, postures reveal new suggestions of movement, and tiny voids cast shadows that hint at hidden intention. This interplay between perspective and detail suggests a deliberate awareness of visual perception by the ancient maker. It challenges modern observers to consider not just the form, but the act of seeing itself, and the knowledge encoded in how these objects were meant to be perceived. The figurines demand patience, attention, and imagination. The Fremont clay figurines remain mute witnesses to an ancient world, their small forms holding whispers of knowledge and purpose that may never be fully understood. The Stonebox Burials of Utah Valley. The story of the Stonebox Burials of Utah Valley begins with a simple question, one that has quietly nagged at archaeologists for decades. Why were some ancient residents of the valley laid to rest in carefully constructed stone chambers that differ so starkly from the funerary practices documented in surrounding cultures? Utah Valley, cradled by the ancient shores of Lake Bonneville and later inhabited by successive Native American cultures, is rich with burial evidence ranging from simple interments to cave burials, yet the few stone-lined graves reported here do not fit neatly into expected regional patterns. The meticulous craftsmanship of these graves suggests a ritual significance that modern observers struggle to fully interpret, a testament to a worldview preserved only in stone. In the arid terrain around Utah Valley and along the lakeshore, prehistoric peoples buried their dead in a surprisingly wide variety of contexts. Cave and rock shelter burials are well documented throughout the larger Bonneville Basin, where sites contain human remains spanning more than 10,000 years of occupation. Some burials are found in places where people lived and worked, while others occupy isolated shelters chosen specifically for the dead, often in positions that align with natural formations or celestial markers. The range of burial settings implies a deep cultural significance tied not only to mortality, but also to the landscape itself, suggesting an intricate belief system in which the living and the deceased shared intimate connections with the environment. Yet even among these varied mortuary traditions, the slab-lined graves of Utah Valley stand apart. Unlike typical open-pit burials or cache interments found elsewhere in the basin, these stone boxes are constructed with intention. Flat slabs form walls and lids that encase human remains, sometimes with accompanying stones placed with remarkable precision. Such slab-lined cists appear in other parts of the prehistoric Southwest, often as simple burial chambers seen in early Puebloan contexts across the broader Colorado Plateau and Basin. The uniformity and precision of the slabs, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds, indicate an investment of labor and resources that hints at significant social or spiritual importance, far exceeding the ordinary scope of burial practices. Archaeologists who have studied slab-lined pits in the basin note that they were sometimes used for burial, sometimes for storage, and sometimes for both over time, blurring the line between daily life and final rites. Near Range Creek and other desert canyon lands, dozens of such cists with slab floors and sides have been found, occasionally containing burials alongside utilitarian artifacts, suggesting complex reuse or ritual layering of space. The dual purpose of these chambers complicates interpretation. Were they primarily sacred spaces, practical storage, or both? And how did those buried within them perceive this convergence of function and meaning? The form of a stonebox grave, a rectangular burial chamber of cut stone slabs, is best known from regions far from Utah, where similar constructions were among the most common mortuary features. In those regions, stonebox graves sometimes include pottery, tools, and personal objects alongside the deceased, implying status or identity markers. Yet, in Utah Valley, these types of interments appear isolated and unexplained, their sudden appearance in an area with no known precedent, raising fundamental questions about cultural diffusion, independent innovation, or lost traditions that left almost no other archaeological trace. However, no clear evidence attributes such burial traditions to prehistoric peoples in the Great Basin or on the Colorado Plateau, making any slab-lined burial in Utah Valley especially striking. The construction of stone boxes here does not align with what is known from Fremont, archaic, or basket-maker burials, which tend toward in-ground interment, occasional rock-lined cists, or cave placements without elaborate slab architecture. The apparent singularity of these graves implies either an isolated cultural experiment or a fragment of a ritual tradition that vanished before leaving a larger footprint, a mystery compounded by the valley's long history of human occupation. When early archaeologists began excavating sites around Utah Lake in the mid-20th century, they occasionally stumbled on human remains in unexpected settings. Excavations at sites along the lake revealed burials dating back thousands of years, while nearby digs uncovered late prehistoric structures and interments associated with various cultural phases. These findings highlight the valley's role as a hub of human activity and ceremonial life, with the Stonebox burials emerging as enigmatic markers amid the more common mortuary practices. Their very presence challenges assumptions about continuity, trade, and cultural knowledge in prehistoric Utah. What makes the Stonebox burials in Utah Valley especially enigmatic is not just their deviation from local patterns, but the hints of deliberate design that resist simple explanation. In several documented cases of slab-lined burial contexts, archaeologists have noted variations in size, orientation, and accompanying objects that seem purposeful rather than random. Some graves align with horizon features, while others are oriented along cardinal directions, implying a ritual or cosmological rationale now lost to time. These variations invite questions about social hierarchy, spiritual beliefs, and the degree to which the dead were considered active participants in ongoing communal life. One slab-lined cyst documented in the region contained multiple interments interwoven with evidence of other site features, suggesting repeated burial or reuse over generations. Other nearby rock shelters held dozens of similar cysts, some clearly used for food storage and others repurposed for human remains, indicating a fluidity between the domains of the living and the dead. The intersection of utility and ceremony in these structures points to a worldview in which death was not a separation but a continuation, a philosophy carved into stone and preserved for millennia. The presence of stone-lined graves also raises important considerations about cultural contact and exchange. While similar graves are known in distant regions, the concept of constructing a protective stone chamber for the deceased might reflect deeper, long-distance influences or independent innovation. Mortuary practices often act as cultural signatures, and when an unexpected form appears at the edge of known cultural boundaries, it challenges archaeologists to reconsider pathways of interaction, belief, and movement across prehistoric North America. In Utah Valley, the surrounding landscape, from the lake's ancient shores to the dry shelters of nearby hills and cliffs, seems to hold an almost magnetic pull toward burial. Cave and rock shelter interments demonstrate that prehistoric peoples repeatedly chose specific places for the dead, perhaps linking earth and sky, life and afterlife in ways that modern science can only partially grasp. The valley itself may have been understood as a liminal space, a threshold between worlds where careful placement of the dead ensured balance, protection, or guidance beyond life. Yet, despite the prevalence of burial evidence in the region, the few documented Stonebox burials here continue to elude easy classification. Were these constructions the result of a local cultural tradition that has not survived in the wider archaeological record? Were they created by a group whose ceremonial practices departed sharply from those of their neighbours? Or might they represent something entirely different, an isolated ritual innovation whose meaning was lost to time? Each unanswered question deepens the sense of a lost past, a silence carved into stone that continues to perplex and fascinate. The mystery deepens because Utah Valley's Stonebox graves do not appear in the major academic discussions of regional burial patterns. They are often referenced only tangentially or remain unpublished in technical reports, leaving gaps that invite speculation but resist definitive answers. Whether they were built for elites, children, ancestors, or individuals of particular importance remains unknown, yet their very construction implies a profound reverence or fear that resonates even across millennia. And now, hidden beneath the valley's dust and roots, the silent stone chambers themselves seem to whisper a question that has no answer. The Goshan Complex projectile points. In the scattered terraces of northern Utah, a series of finely crafted projectile points emerges as a silent testament to human ingenuity nearly 13 millennia ago, defying every expectation archaeologists once held about the valley's earliest inhabitants. These Goshan Complex points, distinct in form and sophistication, appear in a landscape that otherwise offers little evidence of human activity at such an early date. Their abrupt presence suggests a population with specialized skills, capable of surviving in a harsh, unpredictable environment, yet leaving behind only the faintest traces of its existence. Even in their simplicity, each point carries the weight of a story that refuses to be fully decoded. The rolling plains and river bends conceal subtle traces of activity, where soil layers preserve fragments of a world both distant and strangely immediate. Windswept terraces, gravelly flats and ancient stream beds hide the faint impressions of camps and hunting grounds, hinting at movements carefully orchestrated across the terrain. To the modern observer, these places appear empty, almost barren, yet the Goshan Points suggest a dynamic presence, a population interacting intimately with the landscape. Every point recovered invites speculation about who they were, how they travelled, and what survival strategies allowed them to endure where resources could be scarce and conditions unforgiving. Each projectile point, shaped with deliberate flaking and symmetry, carries with it the story of hands that knew both patience and necessity. Carefully tapered edges and consistent proportions speak to a technical knowledge that could deliver lethal precision while conserving material and effort. The point's design demonstrates an acute understanding of mechanics, weight distribution, and aerodynamic efficiency, qualities that would have been critical for hunting large Ice Age fauna. In the thin air of northern Utah's uplands, these small artifacts resonate as evidence of ingenuity and adaptation, a subtle yet powerful signal of intelligence encoded in stone. When examined alongside stratigraphic layers and radiocarbon evidence, these points appear almost suddenly in the archaeological record. Their appearance disrupts prior models of settlement in the Great Basin, suggesting an early human presence that predates other known regional technologies. Unlike Clovis points, which dominate the narrative of early Paleo-Indian expansion, Goshan points occupy a temporal and stylistic niche that is at once familiar and confounding. The pattern of emergence hints at either a previously unrecognized migration or the independent development of a highly skilled technological tradition, leaving archaeologists to reconcile evidence that seems both clear and inexplicably isolated. Sharp edges and carefully tapered points suggest an intimate understanding of prey and environment. Early humans wielding these tools would have required extraordinary precision and coordination to hunt game such as bison, elk, and other large mammals. The point's survival indicates they were both functional and durable, capable of repeated use in a landscape where mistakes could mean death. Every facet of their construction, from the choice of chert to the methodical flaking, reveals an awareness of forces and materials that feels startlingly modern, as though these early artisans were quietly pushing the boundaries of possibility in their time. Unlike Clovis or Folsom technologies, the Goshan Complex artifacts reveal subtle distinctions in craftsmanship and proportion, hinting at independent development or perhaps forgotten influences travelling across distant landscapes. The points are smaller, more delicate in some dimensions, yet retain structural integrity, suggesting experimentation and refinement over time. These differences provoke questions about cultural transmission. Did these early inhabitants adapt ideas from other groups, or did they invent techniques independently, creating a signature style that appears abruptly in the archaeological record? Each question deepens the sense of mystery surrounding these objects, for the answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. The spatial distribution of these points, scattered yet consistent across multiple sites, hints at movement, planning, or even networks of human groups. Their presence on terraces, near river bends, and along glacial margins suggests strategic placement, where game would have been abundant or terrain navigable. The clustering of artifacts, often with no other cultural debris, indicates deliberate activity rather than chance deposition. Archaeologists can reconstruct only glimpses of these ancient behaviours, imagining hunters who read the land with acute perception, leaving traces that survive only in the sharp angles and careful craftsmanship of a stone tip. Ongoing debates among archaeologists continue to explore the origin and purpose of the Goshan Points. Some argue they represent a distinct migration into Utah from northern or eastern regions, while others propose independent innovation in response to local conditions. The scarcity of points and the lack of associated settlements intensify the mystery, suggesting a transient population or a group highly attuned to concealment and survival. Even as modern science provides dating techniques and comparative analysis, the reasons for their sudden appearance and specialized design remain unresolved, a puzzle suspended between evidence and conjecture. Evidence suggests that certain materials and patterns might have carried symbolic meaning. Some points are crafted from particularly rare or aesthetically striking stones, hinting at choices beyond mere utility. Whether these selections indicated status, identity, or ritual remains unknown, but the possibility adds another layer to the enigma. These objects were not simply tools, they were embodiments of skill, intention, and perhaps cultural expression. In their quiet perfection, they provoke reflection on the human capacity to combine survival with subtle artistry, even in the distant past. Rediscovered during surveys and excavations in recent decades, the points often emerge unexpectedly from eroded terraces or ploughed fields. Archaeologists report moments of discovery that feel almost cinematic, a glint of chert in the soil, a carefully struck flake lying beside a larger tip, evidence of ancient care preserved against the ravages of time. Each point recovered is a direct link to lives long vanished, yet the human stories behind them remain stubbornly inaccessible. These moments reinforce the sense of the past as simultaneously intimate and unreachable, a landscape alive with traces that whisper rather than explain. Each new find reshapes conventional timelines of settlement in Utah, forcing archaeologists to confront the possibility that highly skilled hunters and toolmakers arrived far earlier than previously believed. The Goshan Points compel a reconsideration of migration models, survival strategies, and the spread of technological knowledge across Ice Age North America. The evidence is fragmentary, yet its implications are vast, a reminder that human ingenuity can emerge in unexpected places and that even the smallest objects can challenge long-held assumptions about who was here first and what they were capable of. As the points accumulate in museums, collections, and field records, they form an incomplete puzzle whose edges are worn by time. Every artifact hints at a larger network of activity and decision-making, yet the full story remains elusive. Scholars and enthusiasts alike are left to imagine the lives that intersected with these points, the landscapes traversed, and the intelligence applied in their creation. The points endure as both evidence and enigma, bridging millennia while preserving a sense of wonder that persists even in modern hands. Buried for millennia under Utah's shifting earth, the Goshan Points wait in silence, guarding secrets of a past that refuses to be fully understood. The Promontory Caves, artifacts. Fragile remnants of daily life have emerged from the darkness of hidden chambers, preserved for millennia in ways that defy ordinary expectations of decay and loss. The Promontory Caves have yielded moccasins, cords, and other perishable artifacts that appear almost impossibly intact, their survival posing questions about the people who made and used them. These objects are not monumental or ceremonial. They are utilitarian, intimate, and yet their mere presence forces a reconsideration of when and how humans occupied this region. Each fragment suggests a story that science has only begun to trace, hinting at lives that pass silently through time. The caves themselves form natural shelters, their stone walls curling around small chambers where wind and water rarely intrude. Narrow fissures in the rock, combined with overhanging cliffs, create microenvironments of surprising stability, preserving organic materials that would have vanished in most other settings. Dust and sediment settle slowly here, and the arid conditions limit decay. To stand within one of these caves is to feel time suspended, as if the walls themselves are holding on to the traces of human presence, guarding secrets preserved in silence. Within these protected spaces lie moccasins stitched with precision, cords braided from plant fibers, and other artifacts that speak to an unexpectedly sophisticated material culture. The moccasins reveal knowledge of leatherworking that is remarkably consistent and functional, designed to endure rugged terrain while allowing flexibility and movement. Twisted cords, sometimes intertwined with sinew or plant fibers, suggest tools or bindings used for practical purposes that modern observers can only imagine. Each object is small, yet it carries an overwhelming sense of intention, a tangible remnant of hands long vanished. Radiocarbon analysis places these items in time periods that challenge established models of human habitation in the Great Basin. Some artifacts predate known settlements in surrounding valleys, suggesting that early humans navigated this environment much earlier than previously assumed. Their presence is puzzling. The region offers few signs of contemporaneous activity, yet the Promontory Caves provide undeniable evidence that people not only passed through, but also adapted to survive in this seemingly inhospitable landscape. The age of the artifacts deepens the mystery, implying a human story that intersects with both environmental extremes and cultural innovation. That such delicate artifacts remain intact hints at a combination of careful placement and environmental fortune. The cave's conditions alone do not fully account for their preservation. It is possible that those who used them understood how to exploit the space to maintain essential materials. The alignment of these artifacts within chambers and alcoves suggests intentional organization, whether for storage, concealment, or daily routine. Each object seems to have been positioned with thought, yet the exact reasoning is lost to time, leaving archaeologists to reconstruct human behavior from fragments of evidence. Wear patterns and frayed fibers indicate regular use, suggesting these chambers were more than storage spaces. They were part of the practical rhythms of life. The soles of moccasins bear impressions consistent with walking over rough stone, sand, and dry grasses. The cords show fraying in ways that imply repeated tension or binding. Even these subtle details paint a vivid picture. Humans moving deliberately through the caves, adjusting to terrain, and employing materials to meet everyday needs. In the quiet absence of living witnesses, these artifacts speak louder than any text, offering glimpses of resilience and ingenuity. Unlike stone tools or projectile points, these perishable objects carry an immediate tactile sense of human hands and movement. They connect the past to the present in ways that rigid stone cannot. The curl of a stitched seam, the tightness of a braided cord, the pattern of wear along the edge of leather. Archaeologists can infer not only how these items were used, but also how they were valued, maintained, and cared for, revealing an intimate dimension of prehistoric life. The promontory artifacts function as silent testimonies, bridging thousands of years with traces of touch, effort, and intention. Their existence complicates the understanding of cultural continuity across the Great Basin. The construction methods, material selection, and craftsmanship diverge from nearby artifact assemblages, suggesting either isolated innovation or connections to distant groups. Scholars debate whether these items represent a unique cultural thread, a transient population, or traditions now erased elsewhere. The mystery is compounded by the scarcity of comparable finds. These artifacts survive where so many others have vanished, leaving gaps that tantalize more than they explain. Modern excavation brings these items into the light with painstaking care. Each brushstroke can reveal a new fragment, yet the risk of damage is constant. Fibers are fragile, leather disintegrates, and cords can unravel in an instant. Archaeologists describe the process as almost reverential, a dialogue between the past and present mediated through patience and precision. Discovery is fleeting, delicate, and suspenseful, as if the artifacts themselves resist full comprehension, demanding respect for both their age and fragility. Silent and inanimate, the artifacts suggest human stories otherwise invisible. The moccasins hint at walking routes, the cords at tasks completed, the arrangement of items at rhythms of life now lost. The caves may have served as seasonal refuges or temporary encampments, but the evidence allows only partial reconstruction. Human presence is implied rather than documented, inferred rather than declared, and this ambiguity lends an eerie vitality to the chambers, where the echoes of movement linger unseen. Only upon examining their placement near the northern reaches of the Great Salt Lake does the strategic selection of the caves come into focus. The location suggests careful observation of resources, access to water, and proximity to migratory routes of game animals. Seasonal patterns likely dictated occupation, and the cave's natural shelter would have mitigated the extremes of temperature and wind. In these small spaces, humans exercised knowledge and foresight, leaving artifacts that endure as faint but eloquent testimony to their environmental awareness. As layers of dust and sediment are slowly peeled away, the fragments form a fragmented narrative, each item a whisper of lives once ordinary, now mostly concealed by the passage of time. Moccasins, cords, and other objects are simultaneously mundane and extraordinary, offering insight while preserving mystery. The artifacts prompt reflection on the resilience of human creativity, the caprices of preservation, and the fleeting nature of evidence that survives across millennia. The caves are at once an archive, a sanctuary, and a puzzle, holding remnants of a world that science can describe but not fully reclaim. Time has kept its secrets close, and in the shadows of the Promontory Caves, fragments of a vanished life lie silently, daring us to understand what was once ordinary. The Great Basin desert kites of western Utah. Enormous stone alignments stretch into geometric patterns that hint at human intelligence operating on a monumental scale, yet their creators remain invisible. The so-called desert kites of western Utah are sprawling constructions, some spanning hundreds of meters, with long converging walls leading to enclosed spaces that suggest a functional purpose lost to time. Their size alone is remarkable, but what captures attention is the precision of the arrangements, implying coordinated planning and execution. Archaeologists have marveled at these structures, recognizing that they represent human ingenuity in a landscape that offers few clues about the people who built them. Sunlight casts shadows along low ridges and scattered boulders, revealing walls that converge with meticulous accuracy across the otherwise open desert floor. From above, these formations become astonishingly clear, lines that funnel, angles that meet, enclosures that appear carefully calculated. On the ground, the enormity is difficult to appreciate, but from an aerial perspective, the intent becomes visible. The choice of location, along with the alignment of walls with natural terrain features, hints at deep observational knowledge of the environment and the creatures that moved across it. These desert kites form funnel-like enclosures whose full design is only apparent when seen from a distance, emphasizing both scale and purpose. The stone walls often guide movement toward a confined space, suggesting that the builders intended to control animal herds in a systematic way. Some enclosures are circular, others angular, but all share the characteristic of convergence, a technique that must have required a thorough understanding of herd behavior, landscape flow, and the cooperation of many hands over extended periods. Scholars can only speculate how hunters might have guided animals into such enormous traps, for no written or pictorial records accompany these structures. Theory suggests that large groups of people may have slowly funneled game over miles, using the walls as guides, but the absence of any direct evidence leaves this method in the realm of informed conjecture. What is undeniable is that the scale of the effort implies careful organisation, timing, and communication among the participants, skills difficult to reconcile with the limited archaeological footprint of human settlements in the region. Ancient timelines, inferred from nearby artefacts and comparative studies, suggest that some of these constructions predate other known large-scale efforts in the Great Basin. Their presence challenges prior assumptions about the sophistication of early hunter-gatherer societies in this area. The desert kites not only represent extraordinary feats of labour and planning, but also imply that humans engaged in complex environmental manipulation far earlier than previously documented, reshaping our understanding of prehistoric capabilities. Moving hundreds of stones into precise alignment would have demanded careful coordination, labour investment, and an intuitive grasp of spatial relationships that is astonishing, given the minimal technological tools available. Some walls extend over uneven terrain, rising slightly on ridges and dipping into valleys, demonstrating attention to topography that would have affected visibility and functionality. The effort required suggests that these were not spontaneous constructions, but projects undertaken with intent, persistence, and skill, executed over extended periods. Comparisons to similar formations in Asia and the Middle East highlight subtle variations in scale, density, and alignment, suggesting that Utah's inhabitants developed these strategies independently. Unlike their Old World counterparts, these kites are scattered across the Great Basin, integrated with local migration patterns, and adapted to the arid open environment. The convergence of design across continents points to a universal understanding of how geometry and labour could be used to control animal movements, yet the Utah kites retain a distinctive character and ingenuity. High-resolution aerial surveys and LiDAR imaging have revealed patterns invisible from the ground, uncovering hidden enclosures, wall fragments, and the intricate network connecting multiple kites across the landscape. These methods allow researchers to trace lines that would otherwise blend into the desert floor, providing new insights into the planning, scale, and potential interconnectivity of these structures. The more we study them, the more questions arise about the social, cognitive, and logistical sophistication required to create them. Observations of animal migration routes suggest that the kite's placement was no accident. The walls intersect natural pathways, guiding herds toward enclosures with remarkable precision. The builders must have understood not only the terrain but also the seasonal behaviors of deer, antelope, or other game species. Timing, patience, and repeated observation would have been essential, indicating a level of environmental awareness that science still struggles to fully comprehend. Coordinated labour and timing would have been essential for effective use of the kites, implying social organisation and communal effort among groups whose broader culture remains largely invisible. Who organised these hunts, how labour was divided, and how knowledge was transmitted are questions left unanswered. The structures themselves are eloquent reminders that prehistoric peoples engaged in complex cooperative activities that are difficult to reconstruct from fragments alone. Questions persist about how these monumental projects were executed, what techniques were used to herd animals successfully, and whether rituals or social structures accompanied the hunts. The lack of permanent settlements in proximity to the kites complicates interpretation, leaving archaeologists to rely on indirect evidence such as alignment, scale, and environmental context. The mystery deepens when considering that, despite centuries of study, no definitive explanation fully accounts for the combination of ingenuity, effort, and coordination evident in these constructions. Standing amidst the low stone walls, the magnitude of the project becomes palpable, and the ingenuity of its creators is undeniable, even as their identities and society remain invisible. The kites endure as silent witnesses to human ambition and planning, reminders of a people whose knowledge of the landscape, animals, and cooperative strategies far exceeded what one might expect for this time and place. Their presence sparks awe and lingering curiosity, a reminder that much of human ingenuity leaves only subtle traces behind. Silent under the desert sun, the kites endure, their carefully laid stones hinting at intelligence and coordination whose full story has been lost to time. The Fremont pit house villages of Cays Creek. Subterranean dwellings emerge from the earth like silent echoes of a vanished community, their circular depressions and partially preserved foundations hinting at an unexpected level of architectural planning. The Fremont pit house villages of Cays Creek reveal an organisation that stretches far beyond simple shelter construction, suggesting that these people carefully considered community layout, seasonal cycles, and long-term habitation. Archaeologists are struck not only by the ingenuity of the structures, but by the profound mystery of the people who lived within them. Each pit, hearth, and stone lining seems to preserve a fragment of human life, yet the full story remains frustratingly invisible. Circular pits, some reinforced with stone or timber, cluster together in deliberate patterns, suggesting pathways, shared courtyards, and communal zones. The arrangement implies more than just survival. It hints at social planning, as families likely occupied adjacent spaces while still maintaining functional separation. Some clusters suggest central gathering areas, perhaps for rituals, trade, or collective decision-making, though the exact purpose is unknown. The spacing between dwellings reflects thoughtful adaptation, balancing accessibility with privacy. The careful organisation suggests that these villages were intended for extended use, a stark contrast to temporary camps typical of hunter-gatherer groups in the region. Timber frameworks and clay-lined walls provide clear evidence of engineering skill, with notched beams and earthen coverings insulating against extremes of temperature. Roofs were often slightly domed or layered with brush, while walls were reinforced with stone bases to resist erosion and animal damage. Such techniques imply a detailed knowledge of material properties and structural behaviour. The pit houses were designed to remain habitable through harsh winters and hot summers, demonstrating foresight and technical skill rarely associated with Fremont villages. Repeated repairs in some dwellings indicate that these homes were used for generations, suggesting both permanence and the transfer of construction knowledge across time. Hearths, storage pits, and the distribution of tools reveal a window into the daily routines of inhabitants, though much remains unknown. Charred remains show reliance on cultivated crops and gathered wild plants, while stone implements suggest tasks ranging from food preparation to textile production. The layout of pits and hearths indicates designated areas for cooking, crafting, and communal activity, implying a structured rhythm of daily life. Evidence of seasonal occupation in some dwellings suggests that inhabitants adapted their routines to the environment, yet no definitive record survives to explain exactly how daily life was organised or coordinated among households. Traces of food storage and ritual deposits hint at cultural practices that went beyond mere survival, suggesting that daily life at Kays Creek may have been infused with spiritual and ceremonial significance. Archaeologists have found pits containing carefully stored seeds, nuts, and other plant remains, sometimes placed alongside deliberately broken or shaped artifacts, indicating purposeful deposition. Such practices may reflect rituals tied to seasonal cycles, agricultural planning, or community ceremonies. The presence of symbolic objects like small figurines or modified stones suggests that Fremont inhabitants may have incorporated spiritual or cultural expression directly into their domestic spaces. These subtle features imply a depth of cultural sophistication often overlooked in studies of Fremont villages, offering tantalizing evidence that these communities were not only organized for survival but also for complex social and ritual life. The positioning of dwellings reveals careful attention to sunlight, wind, drainage, and proximity to water sources, emphasizing environmental knowledge. Houses were sited to capture the sun during winter months and avoid flooding in spring, while remaining near streams or springs. The landscape itself seems to have guided construction, with natural contours integrated into the village plan. Such deliberate placement implies that the Fremont understood microclimates and how subtle changes in topography could impact comfort, safety, and survival, indicating observation and adaptation skills that continue to impress modern researchers. Shared spaces between dwellings suggest both cooperation and social organization, hinting at communal activities that may have shaped daily life. Paths between homes, open courtyards, and larger communal areas could have served as gathering places, marketplaces, or ritual spaces. The presence of repeated building techniques across the village suggests knowledge transfer and shared construction methods, while variations in size or refinement hint at social distinctions or household status. These subtle architectural cues reveal that the Fremont were not only practical builders, but participants in a complex social network whose rules and rituals are now lost. Material analysis and radiocarbon dating place the Kays Creek villages firmly within the Fremont cultural timeline, roughly spanning the first millennium CE, yet their sophistication continues to challenge assumptions about settlement permanence. Unlike other sites interpreted as seasonal or temporary, these pit houses exhibit patterns of repeated use, long-term occupation, and deliberate planning, implying a significant investment of time, labor, and knowledge. This challenges older models of Fremont society as purely mobile and dispersed, suggesting a nuanced picture of semi-permanent communities with intricate social structures and adaptive strategies. Comparisons with other Fremont sites in Utah highlight what makes Kays Creek unusual: its density, consistency of construction, and subtle integration with environmental features. While other villages show more irregular layouts or varied dwelling sizes, Kays Creek exhibits uniformity that may reflect cultural rules or centralized knowledge of construction. The village's placement also demonstrates a refined understanding of local ecology with proximity to hunting grounds, water, and arable land carefully considered. These distinctive characteristics leave scholars questioning why such a sophisticated community emerged here and how it fits into the broader Fremont cultural landscape. Excavation and documentation have revealed intricate layering of soil, artifacts, and habitation features that provide clues to human activity, yet large aspects remain invisible. Stratigraphy and artifact distribution indicate designated spaces for cooking, storage, crafting, and social gatherings, though interpretation is challenging without written records. Evidence of repeated use, repairs, and adaptation of certain dwellings suggests long-term occupation and complex routines. Even with detailed archaeological methods, many aspects of daily life, the rhythms of work, ceremonial activity, and family interactions, remain speculative, leaving the village both well-studied and profoundly enigmatic. Population estimates and the duration of occupation remain uncertain, as the evidence allows multiple interpretations. Some dwellings appear to have been inhabited seasonally, while others show signs of multi-generational use. This raises questions about how many people the village could support, how labour was organised, and how tasks were coordinated among households. The lack of definitive records for social organisation, trade and governance leaves researchers to infer structure from architectural and artefact evidence alone, deepening the sense of mystery surrounding this community. Evidence of abandonment adds another layer of intrigue. The village seems to have been vacated without destruction, with dwellings left intact and storage pits largely undisturbed. Archaeologists debate whether environmental pressures, resource scarcity, social conflict, or other factors led to the departure. The contrast between careful, deliberate planning and sudden disappearance emphasizes the ephemeral nature of human occupation and leaves the ultimate fate of the Fremont residents at Kay's Creek unknown, a story suspended in time between visible structures and absent voices. Even centuries later, standing among the depressions, hearths and stone-lined foundations evokes awe and curiosity. The pit houses preserve both the ingenuity and fragility of the Fremont, offering tangible evidence of skill, adaptation, and social complexity while keeping the full narrative hidden. Every wall, pit, and framework hints at decisions, routines, and interactions now invisible, reminding observers that the traces of human life can persist long after the people themselves have vanished. The village remains a silent testament to organization, knowledge, and ingenuity, urging us to imagine the lives that once animated it. Beneath the quiet soil of Kay's Creek, the remnants of homes whisper of a community whose lives were once meticulously ordered, yet vanished without leaving a trace of their story. The Uinta Basin Zoomorphic Petroglyphs. Twisting forms emerge from the stone, creatures at once familiar and impossible, defying classification while staring back through millennia. The zoomorphic petroglyphs of the Uinta Basin capture motion and imagination in ways that confound archaeologists, blending naturalistic features with abstract exaggeration. Limbs stretch unnaturally, heads curve in improbable angles, and bodies often merge with geometric markings whose purpose is unknown. These carvings resist direct interpretation, challenging assumptions about prehistoric art in the region. Each figure preserves evidence of meticulous effort, yet leaves the observer suspended between understanding and wonder, unable to determine whether they depict real animals, spiritual entities, or something entirely beyond our perception. Lines etched into rock reveal careful attention to proportion, motion and nuance, suggesting that the creators had a precise vision for each composition. Some figures span multiple feet, carved with repeated pecking or incising that would have required patience and skill. In certain areas, patterns of dots or cross-hatching accompany animal shapes, hinting at symbolic or communicative intent. The clarity of these marks, even after centuries of weathering, speaks to both the technical mastery of the artisan and the cultural importance of their work. It is as if every groove, every peck was deliberate, carrying meaning we may never fully grasp. Though linked broadly to the Fremont culture, the exact identity of the artists and their motivations remains opaque. No written record survives to explain why these hybrid creatures were rendered in stone, nor whether they served as religious symbols, teaching tools, or markers of territory. Scholars can only infer purpose from context, noting the repetition of certain forms and placement on prominent rock faces. This ambiguity heightens the sense of mystery, suggesting that the creators deliberately encoded their knowledge or beliefs in a visual language now indecipherable, leaving a silent, enduring challenge for modern observers. Radiocarbon dating of nearby habitation sites and comparative analysis with other Fremont-era artifacts places these petroglyphs within a broad prehistoric timeline, though individual carvings may span centuries. Some panels appear older, deeply weathered, and partially obscured by lichen, while others retain sharp edges, hinting at periodic revisitation. This temporal layering implies that the Uinta Basin was repeatedly returned to by generations of artists, each adding to a growing corpus of hybridized imagery. The cumulative effect is a visual chronicle of a culture that left no written words but communicated through enduring stone, challenging assumptions about Fremont continuity and cultural memory. Attempts to identify the animals depicted are confounded by hybrid forms and abstract stylization. Horns might merge with wings, tails twist into spirals, and claws are exaggerated beyond naturalistic proportions. Some figures resemble known regional fauna such as bighorn sheep or deer, yet the inconsistencies are striking. Others appear to depict entirely unknown creatures, blurring the line between reality and imagination. This ambiguity has prompted a range of interpretations, from spiritual representations of ancestral spirits to allegorical depictions of hunting success, though no hypothesis can fully account for the consistent presence of these impossible forms. The placement of figures on sheer cliffs, elevated ledges, and otherwise difficult-to-access surfaces implies intentionality beyond mere visibility. Certain carvings appear in pairs or sequences, suggesting a ritualized path or deliberate viewing order. The challenge of reaching these locations indicates that the act of creation may have had ceremonial significance, with labor itself potentially being a form of devotion or social practice. Observers are left to speculate whether the placement relates to solar alignments, seasonal migrations of game, or sacred landscape features, but the precise reasoning remains hidden beneath layers of time and erosion. Careful analysis of pecked grooves and incisions shows the use of rudimentary stone tools, yet the precision suggests repeated practice and refined technique. Small marks indicate detailed finishing, while larger figures required prolonged effort to outline and fill. The durability of the carvings over centuries, often surviving wind, rain, and occasional floods, demonstrates the artisan's understanding of both stone properties and the permanence they sought to achieve. Such meticulous work implies that these images were highly valued, meant to endure for generations, and not simply casual or decorative expressions. Repetition of motifs and mirrored shapes across panels hints at patterns or symbolic systems embedded in the imagery. Certain postures recur, and some abstract lines appear adjacent to similar animal forms, suggesting a visual syntax or a method of storytelling. While the meaning of these repetitions cannot be conclusively deciphered, their consistency implies shared cultural knowledge or codified symbolism among the creators. The repeated forms evoke the sense of a language carved in stone, one that communicates intentions, beliefs, or narratives long lost to time. When compared with rock art elsewhere in Utah and the Southwest, the Uinta Basin figures remain uniquely hybridized and enigmatic. While other Fremont and ancestral Puebloan sites depict bighorn sheep, hunters, or geometric designs, the Uinta Basin's carvings combine elements of multiple species, abstract markings, and unusual proportions. This singularity challenges archaeologists to consider whether the creators were experimenting with symbolic representation, recording mythological beings, or expressing a cultural perspective now untranslatable. Their uniqueness makes the site a focal point for understanding prehistoric cognition, artistry, and symbolic thought in the region. Weathering has softened some lines, yet many carvings remain remarkably legible, preserving both artistry and mystery. Lichen and erosion obscure certain details, while others retain clear outlines of claws, horns, or spiral tails. Modern documentation through high-resolution photography, 3D imaging, and tracing has allowed researchers to study these figures in detail without causing further damage. The balance between preservation and ongoing decay highlights the temporal fragility of the site and the enduring challenge of interpreting carvings created thousands of years ago by hands now vanished. The meaning of these images continues to elude interpretation, provoking speculation about ritual, storytelling, and symbolic communication. Some suggest the figures were part of hunting magic, intended to ensure success or honour prey. Others see ancestral or spiritual representations, while a few hypothesize mythological or cosmological purposes. Yet all remain conjectural, underscoring the impossibility of fully reconstructing intent from stone alone. The ambiguity itself contributes to the power of the petroglyphs, leaving observers with a lingering sense of connection to the minds that once animated these carvings, while simultaneously confronting the limits of understanding. Observers today are struck by both technical mastery and inscrutable meaning, as if each figure were deliberately designed to resist comprehension. Scholars and visitors alike report a sense of unease or awe when standing before these ancient images, as though the hybrid animals were aware of being watched. Each panel invites prolonged study and reflection, prompting questions about the artist's worldview, belief systems, and the cultural significance of these enduring symbols. Despite decades of research, the carvings remain a compelling enigma, bridging the gap between past and present in a way that feels at once intimate and impenetrable. Frozen in ambiguous motion, the Uinta Basin's carved figures endure, silently daring anyone who studies them to unravel a story that may never be told. The Butler Wash, cliff dwellings' sudden abandonment. Signs of life suddenly halted are scattered across the cliffs, from partially filled storage pits to abandoned tools, leaving an enduring puzzle about the fate of those who once lived here. Pottery shards lie near fire pits, and grinding stones remain positioned as if a meal was interrupted mid-preparation. Archaeologists who first examined the site noted the uncanny preservation of objects that usually decay or are carried off over centuries. Each artifact evokes a sense of sudden departure, as though the residents vanished in haste. Despite decades of study, no explanation fully accounts for the abruptness of the abandonment, leaving historians and archaeologists alike to speculate. Carefully carved rooms and terraces become visible only as one examines the cliff closely, revealing an intricate integration of architecture with the natural rock formations. Some rooms occupy natural alcoves, while others are built from sandstone blocks carefully mortared into place, creating a blend of human design and natural shelter. Small ledges connect communal spaces, and narrow stairways allow access across uneven surfaces. The layout suggests deliberate planning, with an eye for both safety and accessibility, highlighting the ingenuity of people who could harmonize construction with the cliff's contours. Visitors are left in awe at the balance of functional design and environmental adaptation. Masonry of sandstone blocks and adobe mortar demonstrates precision and skill, hinting at both engineering knowledge and the effort required to create long-lasting structures. Walls rise in straight, unbroken lines, while corners are tightly fitted, showing the use of leveling techniques and careful placement of heavier stones at key structural points. Roof beams, some still partially preserved, reveal how the builders used local timber to span spaces and create stable coverings. These technical details suggest a sophisticated understanding of the building mechanics, challenging earlier assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric communities in this region. Everyday objects remain undisturbed, woven baskets, cooking vessels, and grinding stones positioned as if their owners might return at any moment. Some baskets still hold traces of seeds, while pottery shards display remnants of pigments and designs. Stone tools lie alongside unfinished projects, implying daily routines were interrupted. The presence of these artifacts gives a tangible sense of life as it was lived, yet also heightens the enigma as they hint at normal domestic activity abruptly abandoned. Such evidence creates a rare and intimate connection to the people who once inhabited the cliffs, even as their motives remain obscured. Among the scattered domestic items, subtle traces of unfinished work catch the eye. A partially woven basket, a cracked grinding stone set aside mid-use, and pottery vessels carefully stacked but never stored. Even small personal touches, like carved notches on tools or remnants of pigments on pottery, hint at a community invested in daily routines and creative expression. These details emphasize the abruptness of departure, as if the ordinary rhythm of life was suspended without warning, leaving behind an intimate, frozen record of human presence now inexplicably vanished. The spatial arrangement suggests a community structured around family units, with certain areas likely reserved for gatherings, ritual, or shared tasks. Larger rooms appear to have served as communal spaces, possibly for cooking, storage, or ceremonies, while smaller chambers may have housed individual families. Narrow pathways between rooms encourage interaction, but also demarcate private areas, reflecting social organization and hierarchy. The positioning of certain artifacts like ceremonial bowls or finely made tools may indicate spaces dedicated to specialized functions, yet no written record exists to confirm these interpretations. The surrounding desert offered intermittent water, wild plants, and game, supporting the community while also shaping the limits of daily survival. Springs and seasonal streams provided essential hydration, while the nearby vegetation supplied fiber, seeds, and edible plants. Game such as deer, rabbits, and small birds would have been hunted, contributing to protein needs. Yet the desert also imposed challenges. Limited rainfall, extreme temperatures, and periods of drought could have made the site difficult to sustain over long periods. The balance between resource availability and environmental stress may have influenced decisions that are now lost to history. Evidence of sudden departure is unmistakable. Unsealed storage, unfinished repairs, and food left in place indicate the inhabitants left quickly without preparation. Grain containers remain partially filled and fire pits hold unburned fuel, suggesting daily routines were disrupted. Personal items such as woven sandals, tools, and children's artifacts were left behind, as if the residents intended to return but never did. Archaeologists note that even fragile objects, usually removed or destroyed over time, have survived in situ, emphasizing the rapidity of the evacuation. The absence of human remains also suggests that no immediate disaster claimed lives here, deepening the mystery. Relative to other regional cliff dwellings, Butler Wash stands out for both its exceptional preservation and the abruptness of the exodus, offering a rare archaeological snapshot frozen in time. While neighbouring sites display gradual abandonment or long-term reuse, Butler Wash captures a single moment as if the population vanished overnight. The cliffside location, though defensible, shows no evidence of conflict or siege. Comparisons highlight how unusual the site is. Its intact structures, complete household items, and spatial arrangement collectively form a compelling and perplexing record of prehistoric life interrupted. Environmental stresses such as prolonged drought, resource scarcity, or natural hazards may have contributed, yet the absence of definitive signs leaves their role uncertain. Sediment analysis shows periods of low rainfall, and pollen samples indicate fluctuations in vegetation that could have affected food availability. However, no catastrophic landslides or floods were evident at the time of abandonment, and the local game and water sources remained accessible. The subtlety of these environmental pressures makes it impossible to determine whether nature alone prompted the departure, leaving only tantalizing clues. Social dynamics, migration or conflict are considered as possibilities, but without clear evidence, all human explanations remain conjectural. Perhaps the community joined a larger regional migration, or internal disputes prompted relocation. Trade patterns with nearby settlements indicate connections, yet no sudden disruption is documented elsewhere. Oral histories from later indigenous groups offer no direct account of the site, leaving interpretation speculative. Each theory contributes to the intrigue, yet none fully resolves why a population capable of building such enduring dwellings would leave suddenly and completely. Detailed archaeological mapping has captured every artifact, room and wall, providing insight into life here while deepening the mystery of the sudden evacuation. Excavations recorded spatial relationships between tools, storage pits, and structural features, revealing an organized, functioning community. Yet these same careful records underscore the abruptness of departure: meals left mid-preparation, unfinished repairs, and personal effects abandoned. Every documented detail enriches understanding while simultaneously emphasizing absence, highlighting how archaeology can preserve evidence of life while failing to explain the choices behind it. The combination of meticulous construction and vanished inhabitants evokes questions about decisions that were made in haste and are now lost to history. Walking the narrow ledges and peering into empty rooms, one senses the rhythm of daily life frozen in time, each object a whisper of routine, work, and care abruptly interrupted. The site invites contemplation of human fragility, resilience, and the unknown motivations that can drive an entire community to leave its home without warning, leaving only the stone, the artifacts, and the enduring enigma behind. Silence pervades the cliffs, where the traces of hurried lives whisper stories no one can fully interpret. The Bonneville Shoreline archaeological sites. The remnants of human activity along the former shores of Lake Bonneville suggest a presence long before modern settlement, leaving behind artifacts that defy easy explanation. Stone tools, hearths, and fragments of pottery hint at lives that unfolded along the water's edge, yet the complete picture remains elusive. The patterns of distribution, combined with evidence of long-term occupation, suggest people repeatedly returned to these sites, adapting to the changing shoreline. Each find provokes questions about timing, purpose, and the identities of those who left these traces in a landscape that no longer resembles the one they inhabited. Once a vast inland lake stretching across much of western Utah, Lake Bonneville receded over millennia, leaving behind terraces, sediment deposits, and dry flats that mask the remnants of ancient habitation. Archaeologists must read the subtle features of these former shorelines, shallow depressions, gravelly ridges, and abandoned streambeds, to locate and interpret sites that offer windows into prehistoric life. The changing water levels would have created both opportunities and challenges, dictating where camps were established, which resources could be harvested, and how humans navigated this shifting terrain with ingenuity and foresight. Early excavations revealed stone tools, hearths, and scattered implements, each hinting at lives attuned to a landscape that has since vanished beneath arid plains. Fire-cracked rock and charred plant remains suggest cooking and heating practices, while small flaked tools indicate hunting, butchering, and food processing. These artifacts, often found in clusters along former beaches or near freshwater springs, demonstrate that early humans were carefully selecting strategic locations to sustain themselves, creating ephemeral communities that left behind durable evidence of both their survival skills and adaptability in an uncertain environment. Spear points, grinding stones, and pottery fragments illustrate a surprising diversity of daily activity, suggesting repeated or sustained occupation along the shifting waters. Some points resemble earlier regional types, yet others show subtle variations that hint at experimentation or cultural exchange. Grinding stones carry traces of seeds or grains, revealing the preparation of food that relied on local flora. Pottery fragments exhibit markings and pigments, evidence of artistic or symbolic expression. Together, these artifacts paint a picture of a community engaged in both practical and creative endeavours, leaving a footprint of civilization now obscured by time and climate. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal and organic remains points to human presence far earlier than previous models predicted, raising questions about migration patterns across the Great Basin. Evidence suggests people occupied the shoreline thousands of years before previously assumed, indicating a need to reconsider the timelines of settlement in this region. The juxtaposition of early dates with more recent occupation layers suggests repeated use of favourable sites, potentially by different groups or over multiple generations. Such chronology complicates the understanding of how populations moved, adapted, and interacted across vast distances in a prehistoric landscape that would eventually vanish beneath the desert's dry expanse. Clusters of artifacts and small camp features hint at movement along the shoreline, perhaps seasonal stops or temporary settlements coordinated with resource availability. Hearths, storage pits, and lithic scatters are often arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate spatial organisation, possibly marking areas for cooking, tool-making, or communal activity. Sites vary in size and density, reflecting different durations of occupation or varying group sizes. This patchwork of settlements illustrates a dynamic interaction with the environment, where people adjusted locations according to seasonal water levels, food availability, and safety, leaving behind ephemeral yet telling evidence of human ingenuity and mobility. The former lake environment would have provided fish, birds, and plants, while fluctuating water levels may have shaped where people chose to live and how they interacted with the land. Wetlands and marshy zones offered edible plants, while shallow coves allowed fishing and water collection. Migratory birds and small game supplied protein, and the surrounding plains provided stone and plant fibres for tools and shelters. These resources required careful observation and knowledge of seasonal patterns, highlighting a complex relationship between humans and their ecosystem. The remnants of these practices, encoded in the placement of artifacts and traces of hearths, convey both daily routine and survival strategy. These shoreline sites challenge established theories, indicating populations existed in areas once considered inhospitable, revealing a complexity in early human settlement patterns. The diversity of artifacts, the presence of multiple occupation layers, and the unusual clustering of tools in specific locations contradict simplistic assumptions about prehistoric habitation. Evidence suggests humans were both mobile and adaptive, capable of exploiting resources across a landscape now thought marginal or temporary. This realization forces archaeologists to reconsider broader migration routes, cultural networks, and environmental knowledge among early Great Basin populations, leaving lingering questions about the ingenuity and resilience of those who first traced the lake's edge. Some artifacts appear in unusual contexts, isolated from clusters or layered beneath unexpected sediments, provoking questions about their origin and the people who left them. Single points, tools, or pottery fragments found far from obvious campsites suggest movements or behaviours not immediately explainable. Natural events such as erosion, sediment displacement, or fluctuating water levels could account for some placements, but not all. These anomalies continue to puzzle researchers, offering tantalising hints of activities, interactions, or cultural practices that remain invisible to the modern eye, reinforcing the enigmatic nature of human presence along a vanished lake. Preservation varies widely. Wind, erosion, and modern development have shifted some evidence, leaving fragments exposed while other traces remain hidden, obscuring a full understanding of activity along the ancient lake. Some sites retain intact hearths and tool assemblages, while others reveal only partial remains, scattered by centuries of environmental change. Archaeologists must carefully reconstruct these disturbed contexts, piecing together artifacts, sediment layers, and landscape features to infer past behaviour. This delicate process underscores both the fragility of archaeological evidence and the remarkable endurance of what has survived, enabling glimpses into lives that were once intimately tied to water, land, and seasonal rhythms. Archaeologists continue to debate interpretations, piecing together environmental data, artifact distribution, and subtle landscape clues while acknowledging how much remains unknown. Some argue for small mobile groups following seasonal resources, others suggest more structured settlements with defined social organisation. Evidence of repeated occupation complicates the story, hinting at cultural continuity or regional networks previously unrecognised. Each new excavation raises further questions. Why were sites abandoned? Why do some artefacts appear far from habitation zones? And what does this tell us about the people who moved through the ancient shoreline? The lack of definitive answers sustains the mystery. Standing along the dried shoreline, one senses both the ingenuity of those early inhabitants and the impermanence of the world they once navigated, leaving only enigmatic traces behind. The lake that supported them has vanished, yet the artifacts, terraces, and subtle landscape alterations endure as silent witnesses. These remnants reflect a society attuned to water, climate, and the ebb and flow of resources, yet also a society whose specific choices, migrations, and daily rhythms are lost to time. The evidence invites contemplation, suggesting lives lived in adaptation and innovation, while reminding observers that much remains hidden in the sands of history. Along the dry, windswept flats, the shoreline murmurs of lives that followed the water's edge and then disappeared, leaving only scattered stones to mark their passage. The Range Creek Fremont Rock Art Isolation. Deep within the narrow canyons of Range Creek lies a concentration of Fremont rock art whose preservation and precision defy conventional explanation, offering a window into an ancient and isolated culture. The images, etched and painted onto sandstone cliffs, present figures of humans, animals, and geometric patterns that remain startlingly vivid despite centuries of exposure. The isolation of the site, combined with the technical skill evident in each depiction, creates a sense of deliberate secrecy, as if the artists intended their work to endure hidden from the eyes of outsiders, leaving modern observers to wonder at the motives and meaning behind every carefully carved line. The site remained largely unknown to the wider world for decades, shielded by rugged terrain and private ownership, until careful documentation revealed the full extent of its hidden galleries. Archaeologists, upon gaining access, encountered walls covered in intricate designs, many concentrated in secluded alcoves and overhangs that had likely protected the work from wind and sun. The lack of disturbance by looters or casual visitors has allowed scholars to study the art in situ, preserving the original relationships between figures and landscape, offering rare insight into the spatial choices and priorities of the Fremont people. The images carved and painted into cliff faces display a striking combination of geometric patterns, animal figures, and human forms, suggesting a sophisticated visual language unique to this region. Some panels show complex arrangements of lines, circles, and triangles, interwoven with figures of bighorn sheep or canines, revealing both artistic skill and a symbolic or communicative intent. The clarity of these images, from finely incised petroglyphs to pigment-based pictographs, demonstrates an understanding of surface, scale, and proportion, suggesting that the creators possessed both technical expertise and a deliberate vision for how their work would endure. Among the motifs, depictions of bighorn sheep, canines, and abstract symbols dominate, yet their arrangement hints at ceremonial or communicative purposes that remain unresolved. Certain human figures appear alongside animals in dynamic postures, suggesting ritual, hunting narratives, or symbolic storytelling, but without definitive context, these interpretations remain speculative. Patterns often repeat across multiple panels, implying a shared cultural vocabulary or a standardized iconography maintained over generations. Each repetition deepens the mystery, offering hints of social organization and cultural values that modern archaeology can only partially reconstruct. The canyon's natural isolation has preserved the artwork with remarkable clarity, protecting pigments and petroglyphs from the erosion and vandalism that have affected other Fremont sites. Narrow entrances, cliffs, and a lack of nearby roads or settlements meant the site escaped both natural degradation and human interference for centuries. This isolation not only shields the art, but also enhances its enigmatic presence, creating a temporal bubble in which the Fremont figures seem frozen, communicating across time with a clarity and immediacy that few archaeological sites can rival. Scientific examination of carving techniques and pigment composition provides glimpses into the materials and methods used, yet dating remains imprecise, deepening the enigma of the image's origins. Charcoal residues, mineral-based pigments, and stone tools found near panels suggest methods of application, but the lack of organic material suitable for radiocarbon dating leaves uncertainty about precise ages. Scholars can establish relative chronology based on stylistic comparison, but the sequence of creation and the evolution of motifs across the canyon continue to raise questions about cultural continuity and the transmission of artistic knowledge within Fremont communities. Contextualizing the art within Fremont society reveals connections to settlements, subsistence patterns, and ritual practices, though the precise significance of the imagery continues to puzzle researchers. Fremont communities in the region built pit houses, granaries, and irrigation features, demonstrating sophisticated adaptation to the landscape. Yet the reasons behind their cliff art remain opaque. The rock art may have functioned as markers of territory, spiritual expression, or communal memory, but each panel leaves more questions than answers, suggesting a depth of meaning intentionally obscured, intended to convey ideas or beliefs that modern observers can only infer from fragmentary evidence. Stylistic consistency across multiple panels suggests a shared cultural framework or communication system, raising questions about the social or ceremonial cohesion of the creators over time. Figures carved decades or centuries apart display remarkably similar proportions, poses, and motifs, indicating that the Fremont maintained consistent artistic conventions despite generational changes. This coherence challenges assumptions about early prehistoric societies in the region, implying a deliberate and perhaps ritualized standardization of visual language that may have served as a cultural adhesive or a means of reinforcing communal identity through art. The placement of figures in relation to cliffs, springs, and travel corridors appears deliberate, implying an intentional dialogue with the surrounding landscape that modern observers can only partially reconstruct. Many images occupy prominent overhangs visible from below yet protected from direct exposure, suggesting an understanding of sightlines and audience, whether human, spiritual, or symbolic. Some carvings are located near seasonal water sources, connecting life-sustaining resources to visual storytelling. The integration of art and environment implies a worldview in which physical space and cultural expression were inseparable, but the exact reasoning behind these placements remains tantalizingly elusive. Certain carvings and motifs defy explanation, including repeated abstract forms and unusual combinations of figures, which resist comparison to known regional iconography. Scholars have noted sequences of interlocking symbols, figures combining human and animal traits, and compositions whose purpose remains unknown. Unlike typical Fremont rock art, which often features standard hunting or ritual scenes, these panels incorporate idiosyncratic or enigmatic elements, amplifying their mysterious nature. Each anomaly encourages speculation, reinforcing the idea that the canyon may have been both a canvas and a repository of knowledge intended for a select audience now lost to time. Despite modern preservation efforts, the delicate balance between natural forces and human curiosity continues to threaten these ancient markings, making careful study both urgent and cautious. Rock faces erode under shifting temperatures, occasional flooding and natural sediment movement, while visitor access, even controlled, risks unintended damage. Researchers must weigh the need for documentation against the imperative to leave the art undisturbed. The tension between revealing the canyon's treasures and protecting them underscores the fragility of human legacy, highlighting the rarity of sites that survive so intact and the responsibility carried by those who study them. Walking among the cliffs, one is struck by the enduring clarity of the images and the unsettling silence of a culture whose intentions remain largely concealed, leaving only the art to speak across centuries. The Fremont figures, in their isolation, offer a silent dialogue with observers, evoking both familiarity and otherness. They hint at social, spiritual, and artistic complexity while resisting definitive interpretation. The canyon itself becomes a participant in this dialogue, its walls both protector and messenger, emphasizing that even in absence, human expression can endure, poised between revelation and concealment, challenging anyone who attempts to unravel its full meaning. Within the secluded canyon walls, the Fremont figures endure as silent witnesses, their meaning locked away in patterns that no scholar has yet fully deciphered.